Recording in progress.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Morning, Mr. Matonsi.
Yes, Chairperson, it's 9 o'clock, and then we do have all the stakeholders in the meeting. If we could start, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Good morning. Please, can you share the agenda we have agreed on?
Okay, Chairperson, I did not change it now. I thought maybe you can just make the opening remarks to say, this is the procedure we're going to do. Can you hear me, Chair?
Okay, thanks. I thought we've agreed on what must happen. And I'm sure I didn't pay attention to the request that we have requested for the agenda to be changed. Members, morning and welcome to this important meeting. The leadership of the IEC, the Home Affairs Department, and all our stakeholders, BMA, Government Printing Works. We are going to receive the briefings as scheduled to this important meeting. We note that there'll be changes in terms of the agenda, which we have requested, that we must allow the Home Affairs, the IEC, we deal with them at once, then we request comments from members, and then we invite BMA and Government Printing Works. Then we'll receive comments from members. So we'll propose that we itemize this agenda as such so that it's able to flow in discussion, but also to release the Independent Electoral Commission team earlier to focus on other responsibilities which they are currently engaged on. We have noted the outcome of the Constitutional Court on the matter that was raised by the NGOs in relation to the threshold. And also we welcome that outcome. But also I think we raised to welcome members for the continuous work that has been engaged on in terms of the issues that the responsibilities that have been given. We have noted also the circulation of the audio in relation to the matter. I think the Director General or the Minister will deal with that has been circulating for people to receive IDs for purpose of the elections. And I thought that it was an important matter to deal with the Minister and the DG, because it may have a dire negative impact on the standing of our election process. We must get a clarity on that, but also to deal with most of the fake news that are currently being circulated or being planned in order to put the elections at risk. I will invite you, Mr. Matonsi, to deal with item number 2. And also I will invite the stakeholders to introduce themselves. And if there's any apologies to note, we'll then record that. Mr. Matonsi.
Yes, Chairperson, I've got an apology from Ms. van der Merwe. She went to a doctor. But also I also received an apology from Ms. Modise, but I can see that she's in a meeting now. Chair, that's all from my side.
Okay, thank you very much. Minister.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to honorable members. Can I get the DG to state if there are any apologies? I'm not aware of any apologies from Home Affairs, but I'm giving over to the DG.
DG? Independent Electoral Commission?
Good morning, Chairperson, to you and the members of the committee, and to the Minister and his team. Chairperson, I have apologies from the other commissioners. As you have indicated, they are involved in another commitment that the Commission has, and also the CEO. However, I am accompanied by the Deputy CEO, Mr. Shiburi, as well as the CFO and the DCO, Henning. So we do have a full team from the administration and are able to deal with the matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Love. Border Management Authority, Commissioner Mashiapata.
Good morning, Chair, the honorable committee members, honorable Minister and DM, and colleagues. From the Border Management Authority side, we have only an apology of the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, David Chilembe. He's not in the meeting. They are busy with the preparations for the festive period that is coming in April, or towards the end of the month. However, in the meeting, I do have the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Jane Tupana, together with the CFO, is part of the meeting, Madam Tonto. And then we also have the Chief Responsible for Financial Management, Ms. Ngobo. Is also here. So that is fairly the team, together with myself, Masia Pato, being Commissioner BMA. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Government Printing Works CEO.
Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, Minister, honorable DM, colleagues, DG. I'm with members of the Executive Committee of Government Printing Works. In the meeting, there's Mr. Ian van der Merwe, the CFO, General Managers, Corporate Services, Ms. Laura Moki, accompanied by her team, Operations Management, GM, Mr. Sihleng Gubani, GM Manufacturing and Engineering, Mr. Kuben Mudli, Chief Audit Executive, Ms. Constance Shibambo, and the Director Executive in my office, as well, Mr. Spusise Kambule, as well as Director Risk, Mr. Ruzan Sunzan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Love, can I start if you're able to brief the committee on the timetable? I'm aware that we're not alerted earlier on?
Chairperson, yes, I just want to say we've also been joined by Commissioner Pillay, the judge, and we will be ready to give you a briefing on the timetable. That will start with Mr. Shiburi, and if there are any questions or anything, we'll pick them up jointly. Would you like us to start at this point, or you'll let us know when it's time to come in?
Yeah, I wanted just to be on comfort if you will be able to, we are ready to brief the committee. It's fine.
We are ready.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Love. Members, we have noted all the apologies and attendance. As requested, we'll deal with the two items. The Minister and the DG will deal with the brief on the panel and also the department briefing on the budget. Then we'll also immediately invite the IEC to brief us on the timetable and also on the budget, and members will comment on that. Then we'll invite the Government Printing Works and the Border Management Authority to brief us, and members will comment on that. In that order, Minister, can I now invite you?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm sorry I missed the first part of your instruction about the order. Are you talking about the first item on the what you call about the panel? Do you want us to present about the panel or the whole Home Affairs report? I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah, apologies, because the agenda should have been changed. We had requested that we invite the minister to brief on the panel and also on the budget, and immediately we invite the IEC to brief us on the timetable and also on the budget. Then members will comment. And after that, we'll then invite the BMA commissioner and the CEO Government Printing Works to present, and members will comment. The order of the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. With the panel, as you know, we had reopened as it was decided upon. By the time Parliament debated this matter last week, the new closing date has already passed. And at the present moment, what is left in terms of the act is for me to consult the IEC and come and announce the name to you. So that's the only step that is left. We've not been able, as you know, the events of the past 2 weeks, how busy I've not been able to meet with the IEC and consult them. So immediately after consulting them, we'll inform you so that we can brief the committee. But in the meantime, may I ask Advocate Kumalo just to summarize, I'm showing the form of slides, what I've said. And then from there, I'll call the DG to present the issues of the budget. Advocate Kumalo, please.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. Thank you, Minister. I was trying to share, but Secretariat can share that few slides of the interim update, so I could take honorable members through it. Chairperson, I think I can proceed because it's not showing on the slide.
No, you can proceed, Advocate, in the meantime.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I will just go straight to slide number 4 because the slide number 3 is mainly the background. So in slide number 4, like Minister have indicated that in November, the Minister submitted and presented on a report relating to the work that has been done to establish the panel. During this presentation to the joint sitting, Minister submitted 9 names from the list of nominees received. The joint sitting, after its deliberation, resolved that Minister should publish a fresh notice, like Minister has just indicated. The joint sitting was further of the opinion that there was not enough demographic representation on the list. On the 12th of December 2023, the notice appeared on the Government Gazette with the closing date for submissions of names set as 19 January. That was the December notice. From the previous notices, we had received 25 names, the committee will recall. 7 names were received after the December or following the December notice. The total combined number of names that were received sits at 32. Of the 32, 7 are females, whilst 2 are below the age of 35. When we look at the list in general, there are nominees who meet the criteria as set out in Section 23(1)(b) of the Amendment Act, namely that they possess the necessary skills, expertise, experience, knowledge, or academic qualification in the administration and running of elections or constitutional law or electoral systems. And these we have vetted that they are not members of parliament. We have also vetted that they are not members of any provincial legislature, and that also they are not office bearers or employees of any political party in the past 12 months. Like the minister has said, honorable members, that what is then left is for the minister to consult the IEC so that they can identify and agree on the 9 names to be presented to this committee as contemplated in terms of Section 23, subsection 9, paragraph B of the Amendment Act. And then that will be the end of this update, Honorable Chairperson and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate. Minister, we'll invite you again to the budget presentation.
Yeah, Chairperson, can I allow the DG, but also I want to ask Chairperson, at the beginning of this meeting, you said we must clarify you about some of the claims that are made on social media about IDs and all that. Should we do it at the end of the budget presentation or when? I just ask for guidance.
You can start with that remark, Minister, then the DG will focus on the budget. Yeah. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, no, Chairperson, thank you very much. We also saw the clip because lots of people sent it to us because they were worried about the gentleman who claims to be voting in both Zimbabwe and South Africa. And fortunately, in the clip, they are actually showing an ID. And I very easily recognized, understanding exactly the meaning of numbers of IDs. Some of the numbers were redacted on that IDs, but the little I've seen told me exactly what's going on. That ID is for a permanent resident. You will remember, Chairperson, that there are 3 types of IDs that are issued in South Africa. The first one is for South Africans, and you will see it by having the first 6 numbers as the date of birth, the 7th number denoting gender, which should be demonstrated by for females being 0 up to 4 and for males being 5 up to 9. Then the last 3 numbers for the purpose of this issue of elections, the last 3 numbers denote nationality. They end with 08 something. It may be 08 from 1 up to 9. Those are South African IDs that entitle you to vote. The second type of an ID is for a permanent resident, meaning the person was given PR, or what we commonly call PR, permanent resident status, but is still a citizen of another country. And the ID we gave them is exactly like the South African ID, except that at the end, the last 3 numbers denoting nationality will end with a 18 or 19 something, 18 something or 19 something. That one does not entitle you to vote. if you look even at the ID that was put on the screen on that day of the claim, after the barcode, there's a barcode there. Just below the barcode is written non-South African citizen. It's clearly written in letters, not in code, non-South African citizen. So that ID, which was shown on the screen, is exactly like that. It does not entitle anyone to vote. But I must confess, Chair, that you may remember that it happened once with a member of the Democratic Party in the Tshwane municipality who was even an MMC. And it was found that she originally is from Uganda, but she has voted and even an MMC. When we investigated, we found that her ID ended with a 18. It was 18 something. I think it was 188, if I remember, which did not entitle her to vote. The mistake at that time, which we soon corrected, and you may remember some years back, which we soon corrected, and it will never happen again. The mistake that happened was that Home Affairs was communicating with the IEC through tables. In other words, Home Affairs will design a table which they send to the IEC for the IEC to look at the voters' roll and see if there are any changes. That table consists of the name in one column and the ID in the second column. And in the third column is a code that indicates whether you are eligible to vote or not. If you put code 1, the person is allowed to vote. If you put code 2, that person is not allowed to vote. In the case of this example that I'm giving, the mishap that happened is that the ID clearly, the column of the ID was clearly indicating an ID that ends with a 08 something, but on the column of the codes, instead of 2, a code 1 was put, which means it entitled the person to vote. So in that regard, I considered it as a mistake of Home Affairs, not IEC, because Home Affairs then argued that no, IEC should have seen the ID number. That is a 18 something. IEC argued justifiably that is not their job to interpret numbers. They don't know the meaning of numbers. It's a job of Home Affairs. And I accepted that. That's the mistake that was committed by Home Affairs by putting codes. Now we've soon done away with that system. Every month, the IEC meet with civics in the Department of Home Affairs, where civics will produce the National Population Register to show who is on the National Population Register, and the IEC will accordingly correct or update rather the voters' roll. So that has been happening since that time, and we think we've cleared our system. So there is no way that any other person will vote when they are not entitled to, like that gentleman I've just spoken, who votes in Zimbabwe and South Africa. Voting in Zimbabwe means he's a citizen of Zimbabwe, and there's no way that he can also vote in South Africa. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. DG?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Deputy Minister. Honorable members, apologies, Chair. I think when you called me, I was just battling to unmute. But before I proceed, while we're waiting for Mosi to load the presentation, I'm joined by the CFO, Mr. Gordon Olambi, Mr. Thomas Sigama from Civics, Mr. Tulani Mavuso, Operations, and DDG, Tampane Molifes Fanyezo, and then the other support staff, Mosi Njoko, and then Moses Malakate, Advocate Komala is already presented, Madiete Makua, and then Mudupi Maisela Kamdruli, and then from the DM's office, Simamisa Ngananga, and then Kayakazi Dasa. I'll therefore hand over for Mr. Gordon Hollamby to take you through the presentation. If we can load the presentation, Mosi, for the CFO. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you, and good morning to you and to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, the Commissioners, and the honourable members and my colleagues on the platform. Chairperson, I'm going to start on slide 3. We started the financial year for the budget process on a negative note. We were informed on the 1st of November 2023 that the Department of Home Affairs' budget will be reduced over the MTF by 833 million rands in 24-25, 891 million in 25-26, and 917 million in 26-25. So, and these cuts were then submitted through the 24 E&E database, which we then complied with. Chairperson, the situation fortunately improved for us, as you will see from the coming slides. Slide 4, we received our first preliminary allocation letter on the 1st of February 2024. Based on this letter, Chairperson, the allocation for the budget cut for the IEC for 24-25 was adjusted to 30 million rands instead of the 280 million rands as originally indicated in the 24 E&E database. Our baselines were accordingly adjusted as well. Slide 5, Chairperson, if you just allow me, I will not spend much time on this, but just allow you to indicate then we have the baseline increases. You'll see there are some baseline increases, but all of it is negative. The 583, 891, and 917. The border management at this stage still indicated a 169, 180 million, and 186 million rand baseline cut. The IECs were adjusted to 50 million, but you'll see in 25-26 and 26-27 that budget cuts of close to 300 mil and just over 300 mil will be implemented. So, Chairperson, this is the allocation letter of the 1st of February. Chairperson, on the 6th of February, just a couple of days later, we received another allocation letter. And Chairperson, the allocation letters are the allocations of budgets done by National Treasury. So it's letters issued by National Treasury. In this regard, Chairperson, we received some good news in that the COE budget for the department was increased with 401 mil in 24-25, 458 million in 25-26, and 443 million rands in 26-27. So this was indeed good news for us, Chairperson. And in addition, the baseline cuts for the Border Management Authority were reversed. So, Chairperson, that again resulted in baseline reductions, but overall baseline reductions, as you'll see from slide 7, it's now significantly less. There's a baseline increase of 400 mil for COE, and then under the baseline decreases, it's the 414, the 710, and the 731. So, Chairperson, so that's just the allocation letter from National Treasury. So, Chairperson, slide number 8. Obviously, the new allocation for COE, for compensation of employees, and the ceiling provides opportunities for the department to fund and fill additional posts over the MTF. So we unfortunately just sit with the 85 million rand shortfall in the incoming financial year. In other words, in 24-25. So we will have to use some of that 401 mil in 24-25 to pay our existing staff, but it still leaves us with 360 mil to fill additional posts. So, Chairperson, our costings now include it's the full posts, the salary increases, and pay progression. In the past, pay progressions did erode our baseline, Chairperson, because previously, in the old days, Treasury would make good the salary increases by giving you an additional allocation. The tendency in the recent years is for Treasury to expect the departments to accommodate salary increases and pay progression within its existing baseline. That means that you erode your COE funding because you will be able to afford less people with the same kind of money. So, Chairperson, we are considering the 360 mil, and we are considering various options to fill natural attrition posts, to prioritize other posts, to fund part of the digitization process, the stipends, and so forth. So that process is ongoing, Chairperson. We hope to have that meeting later this week so that we can conclude and start advertising posts effective 1st of April. Chairperson, the digitization project, unfortunately, we did not receive an additional allocation for the digitization project. The money we received were for the current financial year, as well as the previous financial year. So we did not receive anything for 24-25 and 25-26, but we have decided as a department to reprioritize funds from our own baseline to make sure that the digitization process and project can continue. So, Chairperson, this is just giving you the background. So we had 839 million rands. There's the budget cut, so we're sitting now with 809 more for 23-24 on digitization. Chairperson, slide number 10. Treasury indicated then that we will not receive any additional funding for the digitization project for the incoming year in the middle here. We are still engaging National Treasury to find additional funding for this important project, but we have at least reprioritized 300 more from our baseline to cover the cost of the 4,000 learners, or the stipends for the interns, and some operational expenditure. So, Chairperson, slide 11 is an indication as to where we cut the budget in order to provide for the digitization project. You will notice, Chairperson, that we have not targeted the provinces. So the provinces are not contributing to the baseline cut for digitization. We are trying to protect the provinces because that's where the bulk of our operations take place, Chair. So, Chairperson, the 300 mil is a serious cut to our budget, and ideally it should have been made good by National Treasury. But we also understand the pressures they face, and therefore we intend to cover this shortfall from the baseline, the 300 mil, by our self-financing mechanism, and to become more efficient when it comes to the collection of revenue. And if we then can increase our self-financing, we should be able to cover the shortfall in the short term. So, Chairperson, the slide number 12 just gives you an indication of the allocations per program and economic classification over the MTF. This is now after all the adjustments and all the allocation letters, Chairperson. So this is basically the final allocation letters to our branches and projects in order for the committee then to just note. So, Chairperson, the total of our appropriation has been 12 billion in 23-24. It then decreases to 24-25 to 10.4, 25-26 to 10.7, and 11.2 in 26-27. So, Chairperson, if you ask me where does the cut or the jump come between 23-24 and 24-25, please just remember that self-financing comes through the adjustment estimates at the end of the process. So that 12 million was not our original baseline. So our original baseline was 9.5. So if we add self-financing to the 10.4 in the incoming financial year, Chairperson, we should be at the same kind of number, if not a little bit more. Chairperson, I thank you. This is just the summary. So the last slide is just the summary. So, Chairperson, as I said, we had some good news, and I must thank the Minister for his interventions as well, Chair. The budget cut for IEC was adjusted. The COE baseline for the department was increased. The budget cut for the BMA was reversed. Unfortunately, no additional funding was made available for the digitization project. And Chairperson, this is also important, I must point this out, that an additional 200 mil is penciled in for the political parties funds in the 23-24, the current financial year, second adjustment bill, Chair. So as soon as that bill is enacted, the money will flow to the IEC, and then from the IEC to the political parties. Chairperson, I thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO, for the presentations. Members will now invite the IEC. They will start with a brief of the timetable and deal with the budget. Then after that, we'll comment or interact with the 4 presentations. Thank you, Commissioner Love.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I'm going to ask that Mr. Shiburi present the issues about the timetable, and then he'll hand over to our CFO immediately after he's finished. Thank you.
Mr. Shiburi.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the Minister, members of the committee, commissioners. Section 20 of the Electoral Act provides that the Commission must publish a timetable following consultation with parties represented in the National Assembly as well as in provincial legislatures. We all know that the elections were called by way of a proclamation issued by the President on the 23rd of February, as well as the 9 premiers. Following the proclamations, the Commission held consultation with the National Political Liaison Committee on Friday, the 23rd, and out of those discussions emerged the timetable that will guide preparations for the elections. As the name suggests, a timetable is a listing of salient activities and their associated timelines and cut-off period. The functional purpose of a timetable, therefore, is that it avoids ad hoc decision being taken as it relates to contestants or voters during heightened period of election preparation. This timetable is the longest timetable we've ever had for national and provincial elections. It provides for 96 days within which to prepare for the election timetable. And the longer time was necessary principally to achieve 2 things. One, to have a period of inspection to the roll so that people or interested parties may raise objections against the inclusion or exclusion of certain persons on segments of the roll. Secondly, the timetable was deliberately made longer in order to accommodate a ballot production window period that will help us deal with complicated ballot papers that will be a feature of these elections. In all, there are 23 activities in the timetable that is on the screen. I will, however, not go to all those, but highlight the key areas for political parties as well as for voters. The first activity is activity listed as number 2, which indicates that the provincial voters roll is now available for inspections at the office of the IEC, at the national office, the 9 provincial offices, and all the municipal offices. And interested persons will have until the 4th of March to raise objections to that voters roll that have been made available, that have been veiled for inspection. The next milestone, Chair, I have difficulty moving my screen. Okay. The next activity, Chair, relates to the fact that candidate nomination opened on the day on which the President and the Premiers announced the date of the election. It will remain so open until 5 o'clock on the 8th of March. So a party or candidate that wishes to be part of this election must at any time before the 8th of March at 1700 hours submit its candidate nomination list if it's a party, pay a deposit. If it is an unrepresented party, also submit signatures of voters that support the participation of that party. If a party or candidate fails to submit a list or nomination documents and to pay a deposit by 5 o'clock on the 8th of March, they will not participate in this election because that is fatal it cannot be cured. The voters' roll that we've placed for inspection from yesterday will remain so until the 4th of March. Anyone who wishes to raise an objection to the inclusion or exclusion of a person on the segment of the voters' roll has until the 4th of March to raise an objection. The Commission must resolve those objections and inform interested parties by the 11th of March 2024. Following the objection period to the roll, the Chief Electoral Officer will, on the 12th of March, certify the voters' roll, and that voters' roll will be the voters' roll that will be used for the elections. I've already dealt with the cutoff for candidates and parties to submit their nomination details. At item 10, we will have a short window period within which to inform parties and independent candidates if their nomination documents are non-compliant. These are administrative type issues. These are not fatal to the nomination. This will be, for example, if a party has submitted documents but has not submitted acceptance of nomination, or an independent has not submitted their ID copies. We will inform those persons, and within 2 days, they must correct the deficiencies attended to their candidate nominations. Item number 11 is important, and I think it will be very key in this election. The Commission must, by a day, which is the 22nd of March, inform all parties if there's a candidate who appears on the list of Party A and also appears on the list of Party B and Party C. Similarly, if a person has been nominated to stand as an independent but also appears on a list of a party, we will inform all the parties involved, and those parties will have 2 days within which to make an election, whether to replace that person, substitute them on the list, or to retain that person and reorder their list as they deem fit. So the date for parties to come back to the Commission must be the 25th of March. If the party does not exercise an election or does not notify the Commission within the 2 days, the candidate will be left on the list of that party. By the 26th of March, during 2 days, the 26th and 27th of March, the Commission will avail the list and names of all persons who have been nominated by parties and who are standing as independent candidates to facilitate objections to their candidature. And the objection to the candidature in terms of the Constitution is as it relates to the following. In terms of the Constitution, Section 47, membership of the National Assembly, and Section 106 of the Constitution as it relates to members of the provincial legislature. A person who is in the employ of the state and receives remuneration from the state may not stand as a candidate. However, the Constitution makes provision that the Minister of Public Service may issue regulations or law or guidelines to facilitate those persons being able to stand as candidates. And if those regulations are issued, all public servants who stand as candidates will be deemed to have taken leave on the day that we certify them as candidates. And if they get elected to a seat and take up that seat, they'll be deemed to have resigned from the day on which they became candidates. The second broad category of people who cannot stand for elected office are people who have been declared as unrehabilitated insolvents. Those persons may not stand or cannot be members of the National Assembly or provincial legislature. The last issue, which always gets media coverage, relates to people who have been convicted and who have served a custodial sentence of 12 months without an option of a fine. So that's the first requirement. A person must have first been convicted and sentenced to 12 months jail time without an option of a fine. And that person must have exhausted all their appeal remedies. For example, if they had noted an appeal and the appeal was rejected, the provision applies to that person. A person who is still awaiting the outcome of their appeal, or the period within which they can note an appeal has not lapsed, these people are not categorized in this provision. So it is not enough that a person's name was mentioned either at the Zondo Commission or they were in court. They must have been convicted. They must have served a period of more than 12 months. Their period within which to note an appeal and an appeal must have lapsed. So there's 2 days on which members of the public can inspect the details and raise objections with the Commission. The Commission must deal with those objections and issue its determination at the 28th March. The person who is aggrieved by a decision of the Commission may review that decision of the Commission or appeal the decision of the Commission to the Electoral Court in terms of Section 34 of the Electoral Act. And to do so, the person must have filed by the close of business by court hours on the 2nd of April 2024. So if a person is aggrieved by the decision of the Commission to exclude or to include a person that they don't deem qualifies as a candidate, they can review or appeal the decision of the Commission to the Electoral Court, and that appeal or review must be noted on or before the 2nd of April 2024. The Electoral Court, which is also bound by the timetable, has until the 9th of April to decide on all reviews and appeals lodged against the determination of the Commission as it relates to candidatures. We now move to the provisions of the timetable that apply to almost all of us as citizens, us as members of the Electoral Commission, and people who work in connection with parties. A person who knows that they will be outside of their voting district on voting day may apply to the Chief Electoral Officer to vote by special vote. That's the first category. The second category are persons who are registered as voters, but owing to a physical condition, illness, infirmity, or advanced age, and for that reason can't attend physically to a voting stations, those persons can also apply for a special vote, and we will visit them at the place of confinement. To apply for a special vote, a person must notify the Chief Electoral Officer before the 3rd of May 2024. The period of application for special votes will open on the 15th of April. I just speaking to political parties now, kindly assist us. Don't bring the boxes on the 3rd of May as applications for special vote, because if a person from a party brings a box, we're going to ask that they remain with us so that we capture the entire list, so that we give them feedback, because often you find people have captured ID numbers incorrectly. They hand over those to us and they walk away. We capture those things, but we can't confirm the special votes because an ID is incorrect. And you have on voting day an expectation, an elderly person, knowing that they've been processed for a special vote, expecting the Commission to come visit them, when we know we can't go to them because their application for special vote was not processed because the information provided was inadequate or the ID number was inadvertently captured correctly. So we ask that for parties, if you want to assist communities to access special votes, by all means, if you bring forms, please remain there so that we can give you feedback on each of the applications following the capture. The next item is item 18 in the timetable, which deals with what we used to call Section 24, capital A. Members of the Portfolio Committee will recall that in 2021, Parliament amended the provisions related to Section 24, capital A. Section 24, capital A was introduced to a scheme as a narrow exception to the rule that a person registers and votes in a place of ordinary residence. It was intended to assist people who found themselves unavoidably outside their voting stations on voting day. Over time, however, the section became a mechanism for people to shop for shorter queues at voting stations with where there were fewer people registered, and it has very deleterious effects to the proper administration of elections. So in 2021, Parliament took a decision to amend Section 24A to remove the facility from application at the level of a voting station. Now, a party or a person may only apply for a special vote by pre-notifying the Chief Electoral Officer. The period of pre-notification will open on the 12th of March and it will close on the 17th of May 2024. So if you know that you won't be in your area, you won't be in your province, or you won't be in your municipality, or you won't be in your voting station, you may pre-notify the Chief Electoral Officer between the 12th of March and no later than the 17th of May 2024, and we will make provision. And you must indicate a voting station at which you will cast your vote so that we can make provision for you at that receiving voting stations. The next item, as I move towards closer, Chair, is casting of special votes in South African missions abroad. Two things to mention here. The Electoral Act specifies that South Africans voting abroad can only do so at a High Commission, at an embassy, or at a consulate. Again, in 2021, the law was amended to make it easier for South Africans abroad to access special voting abroad. The changes are as follows. If you are a citizen and you are registered in South Africa House in London, and you intend to vote in London in South Africa House on by special vote in this election, you no longer have to give or apply for a special vote. It's almost like we treat you like you are in your voting station. We will provide for you there. However, if you are registered on the London segment of the voters' roll and you intend to vote, for example, in Maseru, Lesotho on special voting day, in that instance, you are required to give notice of your intention to vote and indicate the mission at which you will cast your ballot. So the application for special votes overseas opened with the proclamation of elections on the 23rd. They will close on the 22nd of April. And persons who have been approved to vote by special vote will vote on the 17th of May or on the 18th of May. So we have made provision for 2 alternate days to accommodate cultural and religious consideration in the hosting countries. So the stations will not open on the 17th and the 18th at the mission. A mission will determine that if for cultural or religious consideration, the 17th of May is not doable, they will open on the 18th and vice versa. So it is not 2 days of special voting abroad. The mission will open only on 1 day, informed by cultural and religious practices in those host countries. The last 2 items, Chair, deal with visitation for purposes of special vote. The first one is item 22. This deals with people who have successfully applied for special vote to vote at a place other than a voting station. We will visit those people at the addresses provided on Monday, the 27th, and Tuesday, the 28th of May. So these are people who vote at home, old age homes, in hospitals, and those type of persons. We'll send our teams to extend the franchise to those category of citizens. People who vote by special vote at their voting station, because they know that they won't be in their voting station on voting day. Let's take, for example, you are deployed by a party to go oversee elections in a certain area, which is outside of your place of registration. You will apply for a special vote and you will vote at your voting station, either on a Monday or on the Tuesday before you proceed to the area at which you have been posted. So special votes at the office of the presiding officer or the voting station will be on May the 27th and May the 28th between 9 and 5 in the afternoon. What is important to note is that only stations at which there are approved special votes will open. If a station has 50 special votes approved, it opens, and if all the 50 people turn up and vote at 10 in the morning, there is no longer a reason for the station to remain open. That station may close because whoever has applied at that station has cast their ballot. The voting day will be on the 27th, on the 29th of May, which has now been declared a public holiday by the president. In short, people who wish to vote abroad by special vote can apply between now and the 22nd of April, and they will vote on the 17th or on the 18th in a South African mission abroad. People who, because of illness or infirmity or advanced age, can't access a voting station will apply for special votes between the 15th of April and the 3rd of May. And if they are successful, they will vote in their places of confinement on the 27th or on the 28th of May. People who are physically able to go to a voting station but know that they won't be in their voting station on voting day may apply for special vote between the 15th of April and the 3rd of May, and they will vote on the 27th and 28th in their voting stations before they leave. The candidate nomination documents must be in by 1700 hours on the 8th of March. If they are not in, that person or party will not be able to contest the elections. That concludes our input, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. And one last thing. Yesterday, the Constitutional Court delivered its order in the Rivonia Cycle matter. In that application, Rivonia Cycle had approached the Constitutional Court to extend its order that it granted to independent candidates, that they should not be made to meet the 15% of signatures linked to a quota in order to contest. They wanted the court to rule that 1,000 signatures are sufficient for political parties to contest. The court consisted of a quorum of 10 justices. The majority decision was 9 justices and 1 minority judgment. And the decision of the court is that it is not in the interest of justice to hear that application on an urgent basis in circumstances when an election is imminent. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shiburi. Commissioner Love.
I think maybe in terms of your program, you had indicated we can go straight into the presentation of the budget. So I'm going to ask Ms. Mbata to come in, if that's in order.
Thank you, Ms. Mbata.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Chair, morning, Minister, morning, Commissioners, as well as all committee members attending. I just want to double check, is my presentation showing? Okay. You'll just let me know if the presentation is not showing. Chair, we are present. Oh, it's clear. We are going to present the targets which really informed the manner in which we are going to spend the budget that has been allocated to us. So I thought it's important that we do incorporate it in terms of our presentation. So I have give you an overview of performance targets. I'll then touch on the 24-25 budget. We'll then explain the manner in which we are, the type of budgeting that we use, and the issue around retention of surplus. And then going forward, we'll then give you a sight of what our future budgets are looking like. If I can go swiftly into the overviews, you'll note that we've got an allocation of 2.3 billion. Of that, in this year, we are also looking at having the election, which is scheduled for the 29th of May, 2024. We have absorbed 281 million in terms of cut, including the current 30 million that has been cut by National Treasury. So cumulatively, that is coming from the previous NTS cycle. Then the huge impact in the budget is really coming from the amendments of the Electoral Act. If I can swiftly go into the targets, we have 4 programs, the first one being Program 1, which is our administration. Here we're focusing on strengthening institutional effectiveness. We've got 4 targets. If I can just touch on the 4 targets, the first one focuses as an output on the number of quarterly reviews. And here we actually look at strategic risk on a quarterly basis. Our next target is around providing cutting edge in a stable, secure ICT environment. Here we look at the minimum annual percentage network and application systems that are available, and we measure this in terms of hours. So we're looking at achieving 90% of the 2,205 hours. Next, we look at the recruitment and retention of permanent staff. Here the output, we are looking at the number of funded positions that will be filled per annum. And we are targeting to fill 90% of the 938 posts calculated pro rata throughout the year. Key on this program is 1.14. We're also looking to effectively manage our finance resources in compliance with the relevant legislation. Here we want to do this by maintaining a clean audit outcome. Program 2. On Program 2, we look at delivering the free and fair election. We've got 2 key targets under this program. The first one, the output is here, we manage free and fair election in accordance with applicable electoral timetable to ensure an efficient and credible election execution of the mandate of the Electoral Commission. And here we target a percentage of election to be set aside. We are estimating that 5% of the elections will be set aside in the year 24-25. The next targets under Program 2 is to maintain a credible national voters' roll to ensure that the efficient and credible execution of the mandate of the Commission. We are looking at, for 24-25, having 27,200,000 people on our voters' roll as of the year end. If we go to Program 3, this is our outreach program. Here we try to inform and engage citizen as well as stakeholder in terms of electoral democracy. And we've got 5 targets. The first target's output is to provide research, thought leadership to strengthen electoral democracy. Under it, we've got 2 output indicators. The first one is the number of research initiatives to achieve, which we are targeting 3 seed research. Next one is to have a number of thought leaderships and interaction. We are targeting 10 of those interactions. The next one, we are actually looking at actively promoting and fostering awareness and participation in the electoral process through civic and democracy education programs, which is our output. So under that output, we've got indicators which require that we achieve 50,000 CDE events for that year. The next one is interacting with domestic as well as regional and international stakeholders. We are looking to have 75 number of stakeholder engagements for the period under review. The last one is we want to look at having a reach of 200 million impressions via communication activities on multiple media platforms. Lastly, we then look at Program 4, which is a contribution and enhancement of transparency in election as well as party funding. Under this program, we've got 3 targets. The first one, we seek to have 4 disbursements to represented political parties. The next one, we are targeting to have 10 liaison sessions with stakeholders, and this is really to strengthen awareness as well as compliance with the Party Funding Act. Then 4, we are planning 4 publications of declarations of political parties, private donor. So that covers all our targets in terms of our program. Then we get into the numbers. If you look at the numbers for 24-25, that being the budget, you'll see we had a baseline of 2.58 million. We then went through the different NTF reviews, which resulted in the cuts, resulting in us being left with 2.3 billion, the 30 million coming from the last review from the NTF. Budget per program. Program number 1 is sitting at 911 million. Program number 2 is sitting at 1.29 billion. Program number 3 is sitting at 2.36, actually 2.37 million. And then program number 4 is 25 million. If you then look at this graphically, you'll note that program number 2, which is not fully funded, but will be funded from the retention of surplus. I'll elaborate on what I mean by retention of surplus. But for it to be fully funded, we need the retention of surplus. But this is just a graphical depiction of the programs and the budgets allocated. Funding pressures. So the funding pressures, 1, this is a result of the financial impact as a result of the amendments in the Electoral Act, and this has had various impact on the operations. I'll get to it in the next slide. Shortfall due to budget cuts in relation to the expansion as well as electoral staff required to successfully execute the election. Next slides. Also, the Electoral Commission, what we've done is we have accumulated enough surpluses to fund these anticipated shortfalls that are just on a high level discussed in the previous slide. And the main contribution of this retention or the surplus that we've retained is the manner in which we budget as the IEC. We've got what we call the straight line budgeting. I'll illustrate what is a straight line budgeting, which then allows us to save up for that election period. But what is key about the retention of the surplus is that we need to secure the retention for 23-24 election period. This is dependent on National Treasury's processes of us submitting final numbers in terms of financial statements, and which this will only be done on the 31st of July. That's when the HESA will then issue an audit opinion for us to then submit to National Treasury to get the retention of surplus. But as a mitigation to the risk that we see, what we will do is we will reprioritize projects so that any shortfall that are election related are properly funded. Now, just to maybe drill down to the electoral amendments and the impact where the risk, where the huge financial impact was. The first one is the ballot paper. While we do have an introduction of a third ballot paper to cater for the regional ballots to be contested by the parties as well as independent candidates for the elections to the National Assembly. The projected length of the ballot paper is longer, and this was for the first time, and this does have financial impact. Also, the impact of the increased longer ballot paper on the electoral material, such as ballot boxes, security seals, as well as ballot booths. All this has a ripple effect on other components. Thirdly, the rewriting of critical business systems, the applications to include the requirements of the changes in the new legislation. Next, also the possibility of increasing the number of staff allocated to count the ballot papers before the results are actually announced. Further impact on amendments, also the increased communication that is coming from our outreach program. We're planning on increase that using civic as well as democracy education campaigns to educate the public on these changes. And then also broadening that our liaison roles with our by the Commission to include independent candidates. So we are broadening that scope in terms of communication. And you must also be aware that there's also a high probability that there will be increased litigation. Straight line budgeting, this is what I've mentioned before. So what happens, as you can see depicted, we get a budget that is straight lined. So we don't, and the activities of the Commission is that some years you've got a non-election years, some years you have an election years. And what it does to expenditure, in an election period, your expenditure is high. In a non-election period, your expenditure is lower. So resulting in your spends having spikes and drop. But what happens from a budgeting perspective is that we get a straight line budget and the amount that we get doesn't change and is only changed as a result of cuts coming from National Treasury. And that's just depicted in this graph. So it's going to be key that the retention or the surplus that was actually saved coming from 22-23 year is retained so that we can fully fund the election for 23-24, which then is our surplus, the extra money that was actually made from less expenses. MTF cuts, now we're looking forward to the period of 2026. This is just to show you what's going to happen in 25-26 as well as 2026-27. So it should be noted that about 607 million budget cuts across 25-26 year as well as 26-27 year. And this has resulted in 2026 local government election not being fully funded. The previous slide just shows you the trends in comparison of our budget versus what has been cut. But I think, let me hand over then to the DCO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CFO. Mr. Shiburi.
Chair, the endearing message is that even with the difficulty in the national fiscus, National Treasury has endeavored to make monies available to us to deliver decent elections. We have, on our part, created savings that will help us during the lean periods if we are able to hold on to them after approval by National Treasury. Chair, let's end it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, all members who have presented, colleagues. Members will interact on these reports, Home Affairs and the IEC, and I will invite members to raise hands. Mr. Matonsi, you will assist me just to get members to raise hands to comment on all the reports that have been presented. And then we'll stand off the items, then we'll move to BMA and Government Printing Works. I will invite see Honorable Ross, Honorable Pillay. Okay, Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters for the very clear and comprehensive presentations. Chair, we welcome the briefing on the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel, and we'd just like to get an idea, I don't know if I missed it, but what is the time frame for this to be presented to the committee? Because we're seriously running out of time. We have, the committee would have to complete its work 12 months after the election. So that would be by the end of May 2025. And so we're really sitting just over 14 months away. So I just want to understand when are we as the committee going to receive those recommendations? Then in terms of Home Affairs, so the reversal of the budget cuts for the BMA is welcomed. I think we can all agree border security has been severely underfunded. My question here really is, compared to the original budget plan for the BMA, how far behind are we now? And are there discussions with Treasury in terms of how that gap can be closed? Then in terms of the compensation of employees baseline, so there's an allocation for the midterm period, and that money is going to be used to fill more posts. My question really here is, what happens after that 3 years? Will there suddenly be a massive amount of wages there that are now left and that is unfunded? I just want to get an understanding what happens after the 3 years. How are those posts that are now created based on a midterm allocation? How is that sustained then beyond the 3 years? Then the digitization project, I think it was announced in 2022 at the SONA to employ 10,000 youth, and it started on the 1st of November 2022. So we see there's 809 million for this current year that we're in, and then 300 million is going to be reprioritized from the departmental baseline. So that seems to take us then theoretically about a third of the way through the next financial year, which is more or less just after the election, is my understanding. So my question about this project is really, what does this mean for this project? I mean, the scanning is a critical project. As in the beginning of our term, we went to visit the archives. Many of the archives we heard were inaccessible. And what is happening is people are losing the original documents. They're unable to get it. So they're looking for their grandparents' document. It's just not available. And it's causing havoc. So I just want to get an understanding of where we are with this project in terms of the scanning, how many scans have been completed, and where will we be left after this money runs out in terms of this project? Because it's something that the next term of Parliament, they're going to have to take this over in terms of how do we resolve that issue of the scanning that desperately needs to be done. And then my final question for DHA is on the 10th of October 2023, the DG confirmed that the minister had given the go-ahead for South Africans born abroad and naturalized citizens to be able to receive smart IDs with immediate effect. And the DG indicated that this work has commenced. So will this project be completed by the end of this financial year? And if not, is there funding for it in the 24-25 financial year? And when can we expect this project to be done? Then from the IEC point of view, it's obviously concerning to hear that the 2026 LGE is not funded. Is there any indication or discussions about how this will be funded? Then the second question is the allocation for the procurement of the new head office impacted by the budget cuts? If we can just get an update on that. And then just from the timetable point of view, thank you for that presentation. My question in that regard is the Electoral Act allows South Africans abroad to cast their votes at any embassy, high commission or consulate. And my question is, why are honorary consulates not included as voting stations? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ross. Honorable Pile.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and let me greet all of the colleagues on the platform and all honorable members. Chair, firstly, I want to appreciate all of the presentations that were made and note the presentations. In respect of the DHA, I just want to find out what are the critical vacancies that we have budgeted for in this financial year, and what is the time frame in respect of that. I understand that we still have an acting DDG immigration. Is that process, or where is that process in terms of finalizing that? Because I think it's important for stability. Chair, briefly on BMA, but we are going to receive a presentation, but just in respect of the budget cut reversed, we want to appreciate that, particularly because this committee has been raising concerns that the BMA is underfunded, and in order for it to function optimally, it has to be allocated the necessary funding. I also am concerned that being an election year, the IEC should have not at any point received budget cuts, particularly because they would need additional funding and additional budgets, because this election is different from another election. And we all know that the inclusion of independents are going to then give rise for further costs. And not just ballots, but there's going to be cost across the board on everything. And there should have been some kind of provision made for additional funding. Chair, I think that for me would cover the presentations that we've received. Or the last one on the electoral reform panel. We appreciate the update that the minister has given. And we just want to say that we hope this can be finalized as soon as possible. If it come to us, within the next week or two, we'd appreciate that, because this process really needs to also reach finality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I think those were the two comments on the reports. I will start with the IEC. Then, okay.
Sure. Sorry, man, I got cut. So I'm not sure whether
you can proceed.
On all, Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and members and all the colleagues that are present. We have a concern, Chair, in respect to the application that we have to make for special votes, especially on those that will not be in their provinces or in their voting stations on the day of voting. Quite a lot of people, if you are in Eastern Cape, KZN, and many other provinces, people do a lot of migration in search of opportunities. Mostly they are found in Gauteng, in the Western Cape, where there is some small opportunities that are available. So the application, the time at which this we are communicating, especially from the highest level, that they must make applications to vote where they are, or where they will be on the day. I think the implementation of it cannot be on immediate basis. We have to do a different way, gradual implementation of that decision, because it is going to impact on voter turnout. It's going to impact on a lot of things for all other political organizations. So if you are in Northern Cape, for instance, where the institutions of higher learning are very few, you are going to have a problem. Remember, the voting day is on the 29th. And then what then happens to, we only go home for that holiday, which is on a Wednesday. And you do not necessarily see a lot of people going back home only just to go and vote and come back. It's a very complex situation that I think the IEC needs to review in terms of implementation. You can't really take a decision and implement it immediately around the application and all of those things. So I wanted to ask to caution the IEC chair that maybe there has to be some means in which we look into it. Without us implementing it immediately, we have to give other options that are there, so that we do not have people whom will have applied. Yes, you can apply, but the means to go back to your voting station or to be where you are is going to be a very difficult situation. I'm not sure whether we are going to reach a lot of people in terms of this message you are speaking about, especially from the IEC. So I wanted us to caution the IEC to check whether there could be other alternatives that could be presented, which will be favorable for our people. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Before I invite our colleagues, can I check if there's still other members? Okay, thanks. Those are the three comments or questions that were arising. We'll start with the IEC, and then we'll invite the minister and the DG. IEC, Commissioner Love.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. When it comes to the issue of the new head office, I'm going to ask that DCO Henning will give some indication of where that is, but also then that can be followed up in relation to the funding issue by Mzimbatha. On the question of the issue of the honorary consulates, I'll ask Mr. Shiburi to come in on that issue. It is a matter that he can comment on to the extent of identifying what the difference is between an honorary consulate and any other kind of consulate and diplomatic facility. As to why it is not within the legislation, I think that's not, that's a parliamentary, that's an issue for Parliament to review at some point when it believes that it might be useful to do so. With regard to the Section 24A notices, Mr. Shiburi will also comment on that. But what I did want to say is this is a provision in the law, and I think that the concern that is raised about a person who will not be at their normal address, and it would be very difficult for them to travel just for the sake of voting on the Wednesday. I think that's exactly why the provision of the 24A is there, and all that is required is to give the notice of where somebody will be. And following the consultation with the Party Liaison Committee, this possibility to give notice was pushed to even further out, so that people can know, by the 17th where they will be on the 29th. It's less than 2 weeks that they should be able to know, and as long as they are then in a position to give that notice to the CEO, we would make those arrangements for them. But I will ask when Mr. Shiburi comes in that he picks up on that to explore any other aspects of that. But could we maybe start, Chairperson, through you, with DCO Henning and then Ms. Mbata in relation to the new head office and the funding issues pertaining to that, as well as to 2026 local government elections. Through you, Chair.
Thanks. They can proceed.
Good morning and all protocol observed. In terms of the permanent national office accommodation for the IEC, we have procured and engaged with National Treasury GTAC unit in order to assist us with the development of the specifications. The specifications is in the process of being evaluated and assessed by the specs committee, where we bring on board not only our own expertise internally, but also that of various of the engineers and the conveyancing and land purchase and land environmental survey specialists to assist us to ensure that the specifications is transparent, competitive, and has the basis to make sure that there's every person that can potentially participate in the country will be able to respond to the specifications. That's where we are with the process of purchasing a permanent home for the IEC.
Thanks, DCO. Maybe the CFO can then pick up and deal with the funding aspects of that question, as well as with the funding for the local government elections. Dawn?
Thank you, BC. Chair, on the issue on the permanent home, the budget is sitting in the portion that is part of the retention of surplus. As indicated, that will be considered for approval when comes 31 July, when we submit our annual financial statements to National Treasury. On the issue of the funding of the next LGE, we did receive the communication on the additional cuts in January. So there is a lot of ongoing discussions with National Treasury on how we do manage those cuts and how we're going to fund the shortfall for the LGE that is coming up. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dawn. Through you, Chairperson, if I could ask Mr. Shiburi then to deal with the remaining two issues of the honorary consulates and Section 24A. Mr. Shiburi.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Commissioner Love. The Commission doesn't determine the venues or facilities to be used as voting stations overseas. That is already done in the Electoral Act in Section 33. And Section 33 says voters abroad will vote at a High Commission, at an embassy, and at a consulate. We understand that that does not extend to these three places that have been mentioned. However, Chairperson, there is currently a live case implicating honorary consulate. And for that reasons, and out of respect to the courts, I would rather we do not go into the details and the merits of that case, and we can brief the committee once the court has spoken in that area. On our part, we are making preparations on the basis that, guided by DECO, voting will happen at High Commission, embassy, or consulate, and no other facility. The issue on Section 24 capital A application, as Commissioner Love indicates, we've placed the closing date as late as possible without imperiling proper arrangements, because you could move the date out and it becomes meaningless because we have no time to make proper arrangements to ensure that those persons can be served at those facilities. So the 17th of May is the very latest that we can close special Section 24 capital A applications in order to facilitate proper arrangements so that people can enjoy their right to vote. I think to repeat there is as follows. If a person applies for a Section 24 or pre-notifies us that they'll vote by Section 24A, if they are in the province in which they are registered, they will still receive their 3 ballots. However, if they vote by Section 24A outside the province in which they are registered, those category of voters will only receive the national compensatory ballot for the obvious reasons that the law requires that people must vote and influence outcome of elections that have territorial boundaries in the area in which they are ordinarily resident. So a province is a constituency for purposes of national and provincial election. And in brief, a person who votes, having pre-notified us by the 17th of May and they vote in their province, they will receive the 3 ballots. And if they vote outside of their province, they will receive only the national compensatory ballot. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, IEC. Commissioner Love, is any other thing you want to before I invite the Minister?
Chairperson, no, I think that we've covered the issues that were raised in respect of the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, let me start with the IEC just to emphasize what has been said about this issue of voting day where people might not be in the station where they registered. I had lots of people raising it, even in government, in the JCPS cluster, the police specifically are raising it very sharply. Somehow they believe it must be relaxed. I just want to state to the House, honorable members, that remember that this is not a new act in terms of the Electoral Amendment Act. It's an act that was passed in 2021 in the Electoral Laws Amendment Act 2021, Act number 4 of 2021. It was prompted by the fact that in the 2019 elections, there are people who claimed to have voted many times, moving from one station to the other to vote. And if you remember, it was a big argument. Some parties were even threatening to go to court. The IEC then put up mechanism to correct that. One of them is this voting gadget, that has been introduced and presented to members of the committee. The other was this provision that if you are going to vote outside your station, you have got to give notice so that we know definitely that you are going to vote there. Now, I'm raising it, Chair, because if it must change, it means Section 24A, Section 9 of the Electoral Laws Amendment Act passed in 2021. It means it has to be amended. What one will advise is the best logistical mechanism on how to do it, rather than believing that it can be reversed or whatever, because there's no chance that we'll be able to amend any act now before the election. Chairperson, the second thing I want to raise, the time frame for consultation. We are really hoping it will be next week, Chairperson. As I'm saying, we are left with only one step. That was of consultation. We can't do away with it because it's also in the act that we have to consult with the IEC. We are really hoping that by next week we'll have done so and we'll be ready for the committee. May I humbly ask, Chairperson, that the question by Honorable Ruos on the BMA and Honorable Pillay also on the BMA be presented when the BMA is coming to present. I'm doing so, Chairperson, because I'm very aware that the BMA is now a standalone entity. It's no longer incubated as a branch in the Department of Home Affairs as it was before April last year. But the tendency is to still believe that the BMA is still a baby of Home Affairs. I just wanted to mention that let's put it at the back of our minds that this is a standalone entity. The fact that it is controlled by the IMC, which is chaired by the Minister of Home Affairs, is in the act, but it does not necessarily mean that BMA is now a baby of Home Affairs. On the issue of digitization, Chairperson, this is a very, very important project. We are aware of the oversight by Treasury about what they've done, but we really hopeful that they are definitely going to correct this because there is just no chance, as Honorable Ruos have said, that won't continue with the issue of digitization. It will be a complete disaster if we do not do so. I will leave the DG to answer the question on the smart ID cards for people who were not born inside the country, and on the issue of critical vacancies. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. DG.
No, thanks, Minister. Thank you, Chairperson. I suppose with regards to the question by Honorable Pillay on critical vacancies, so priority, as CFO indicated, Honorable Pillay, will be to continue to ensure that our civic services is optimally staffed. And therefore, the first priority will be to ensure that our mobile trucks have officials to man them, and also the mobile truck drivers. And the second area, of course, in terms of our core business will be immigration. And then, of course, support functions such as information systems and also legal. In the legal services section, for example, Honorable Pillay, we only have one director, contracts management. And therefore, we need to make sure that that person, given the amount of contracts that we deal with, we have additional support. And then, of course, with regards to the question by Honorable Rose, that project, as the commitment was made, has actually started.
Proceed, DG. I've noted that you have been disrupted.
Chairperson is muted.
DG, I can proceed.
All right. I was saying with regards to the second question by Honorable Rose, we did send out letters inviting those that are naturalized citizens to start visiting our offices, and we hope that in the next 6 to 8 months we should be able to complete this process. But the project has actually started, Honorable Rose. Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, DG. CFO, is there any other matter?
Chairperson, if you allow me, I'm just going to respond to the question by Honorable Ruiz on whether there is going to be any layoffs after the 3-year period on compensation of employees. And I wish to assure him that the 400 mil, which we are receiving in 24-25 for compensation of employees, is a recurring budget item, Chairperson. Therefore, it will go to our baseline. It will be a permanent increase in capacity. Thank you, Chair.
No, thanks, colleagues, and all the reports are noted and presentations. The issues that the Commissioner Mete will deal with, which have been raised by Honorable Pillay and Honorable Ruos, as you respond or in making your presentation. We'll then stand off the two presentations. All matters have been responded. Commissioner Mebza? No, sorry, Commissioner Mashapata.
No, that's great. Thanks, Honorable Chair, committee members. Yeah, let's appreciate the opportunity to reflect on the BMA budget for the 24-25. Maybe, Chair, as the DG has done, and also IEC, if you would allow the BMA CFO to also take the committee through the presentation. She is Assistant Commissioner Zama Tonto. This is a first meeting. You will remember, Chair, as well as the committee members, that in the previous meeting we had indicated that we were hard at work to bring on board the CFO into the BMA. She started on the 1st of November, and therefore she should be able to make the presentation through. and also just to appreciate the work that the CFO of Home Affairs did in holding the fort from 1st April until 31st October last year, before ours actually came on board. So through you, Chair, if we might allow her to come through to render the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. She can proceed.
Chairperson. Chairperson.
Mr. Matonzi.
There is a hand from Commissioner Love.
Commissioner Love?
Chairperson, my apologies for interrupting. Is it possible for us to be excused to attend to our other commitments?
No, I thought you've joined the Border Management Authority, Commissioner Love. I think in our opening, we have indicated that immediately with your presentation has been interacted with, you'll be released to attend to other matters. Thank you very much with your team. CFO BMA, can you proceed?
Thank you, Chair. Good day to all.
Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe first, good morning to the Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister, the Honourable members of the Portfolio Committee, my colleagues from the Department of Home Affairs, as well as the other public entity under the Department of Home Affairs. With that, Chair, may I ask that we move to slide number 5. I will not bore the committee just on the presentation. I'll go straight to what we are here to speak about. If I can ask if we move to 5, we can actually move to 6, which is the background. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, if I can just give a background of who we are, is the BMA in 2013, Cabinet mandated the Department of Home Affairs to lead the establishment of the Border Management Authority. This spoke to creation of a single entity tasked with the execution of the border law enforcement. It is on the 1st of April 2023 that the Border Management was formally established as an independent national public entity in terms of Schedule 3 of the PFMA. BMA was officially launched as a third armed service in South Africa by the President on the 5th of October 2023. Maybe then to speak to the funding of the Border Management Authority. The Border Management Authority is funded through budgets that were transferred from 4 transferring departments, mostly relating to staff members integrated into the BMA. Therefore, the transferred budget comprises 90% of the compensation of employees, leaving a very immaterial balance for the funding of goods and services. In response to the envisaged deficit that we already saw with the amounts that were being transferred, BMA applied to National Treasury for an allocation of 2.9 billion in the FY 2023-2024 financial year. The only amount that was approved was a 250 million, and this is actually less than 10% of the requested allocation. I'll ask to move to the next slide, please. Chairperson, on this specific slide, we'll be looking at the allocation for BMA across the MTF period. If we specifically concentrate on the FY 2023-2024, we have been allocated 1.3 billion, of which 72% of it is allocated to the compensation of employees, and the remaining balance then being allocated to goods and services. The focus for BMA in the FY 2023-2024 financial year was to ensure the effective transferring of employees from the transferring department, whilst also ensuring that we've got the adequate tools tools of trade to be able to service our mandate as such. However, we must raise the fact that, and I think already mentioned by one of the honorable members, is the fact that BMA remains underfunded. And this compromises the ability for BMA to be able to attract capacity and be able to retain the skills that we require within the entity. This also speaks to our ability for us to be able to provide tools of trade and invest in things such as technology. If we can move to the next slide. In the FY 2023-2024, and I thought it'd be important that we speak about what has BMA actually done with the money that it has received, which was the 1.3 billion. Our greatest focus, as I had already mentioned, is that majority of funding that we received was specifically for COE. The remaining amount, which relates to the goods and services, was specifically aimed at being able to provide the tools of trade for the entities, such as your fleet management, your uniform, given that we are a law enforcement entity, as well as the launch of the BMA. I will not spend much time. I'll move to the next slide. The allocation for the FY 2024-2025 financial year, BMA has been allocated 1.4 billion, of which 1.2 billion is going to be allocated towards employees. That is the COE, and the remaining balance being allocated to the goods and services. If you compare it to, especially the COE, if you compare it to what we had in the 2023-2024 financial year, there's been an increase of 8%. And the increase specifically relates to us being able to increase the senior capacity within our ports of entry as well as our regional areas. Also to recruit critical positions within the corporate services department. To date, if you look at our corporate service department, it is manned by 31 employees, which are supporting over 2,115 operational staff. This ratio is way below the current norms and good practices. The balance which we have spoken about, which currently sits at 194 million, will be used to fund goods and services. And we've actually mentioned some of the top items that BMA will be looking at funding, such as your fleet, your operational leases across our 4 regions, our software investing on ICT, as well as capital expenditure that we would need to incur. If we can move to the next slide. Chairperson, as mentioned by the CFO of the Department of Home Affairs, BMA has been exempt from the budget cuts throughout the MTF. As BMA, we remain appreciative of the decision that was taken, as we understand and are mindful of the prevailing economic crisis that our country faces. And we will also have, as an entity, we also have, in line with many government entities, developed and implemented a cost containment strategy, which is in line with the cost containment guides as issued by National Treasury. However, we cannot raise the fact that even with our implementation of the cost containment strategy, BMA still remains grossly underfunded. This has a significant impact on our ability to be able to render our mandate. The following are some of the funding challenges that we would like to bring to the Portfolio Committee. The provision of tools and trades to render our mandate. The current funding is insignificant to be able to meet the needs to effectively, for BMA rather, to be effective in interception of the inflow of illegal goods and illegal movement of people through our ports and vulnerable segments of our borderline. Chairperson, to deliver our mandate, we will require tools of trade, such as these that have been mentioned: patrol vehicles, border-worn cameras, which will assist us in being able to identify corrupt services, activities rather, as well as our technology, our forensic technology. With regards to ICT, we have inherited 4 different networks from 4 different transferring departments. These networks do not interface. Also further to this is that we currently have a limited bandwidth that does not allow for fast processing of transactions at our port of entry. This compromises us in that we have long queues that are waiting in order for them to be able to come into South Africa or leave South Africa. I must also add the fact that, or rather thank the Home Affairs for the investments that they've done on the BMCS, which has improved the capability in terms of security. However, even with such investment, much investment is required for us to ensure effective functional systems rather. Security at our land borders remains a great concern. Currently, we have, maybe the slide before I get to the end, if I may ask. Security at our port of entry remain a significant concern with limited surveillance ICT infrastructure. In the FY 2024-2025 financial year, we have planned to at least install high-defined surveillance cameras with facial recognition and artificial intelligence capacity within 11 ports. We would like to do more. However, with limited funding, we are unable to actually do this to install these high-defined surveillance security cameras within all of our ports. And I need to also mention the risk that this has in terms of the security of our borders. If we can then move to the last slide. Chairperson, the port of entry infrastructure taken in aggregate is unsatisfactory and generally at the point of failing to serve its purpose, and this is well known. BMA with DPWI needs to be able to fund the repairs and the maintenance of our ports of entry. If we continue not to invest in the port infrastructure, it will have a negative impact on the ability of our authority to be able to deliver on its mandate, specifically as the South African ports have been denounced as porous. Further, the poor maintenance of facility raises a high risk for us in that we are failing to meet prescribed standards imposed by international regulation authorities. In conclusion, the BMA as a public entity is well understanding of the financial pressures that are faced by our fiscus. And we continue to support the initiatives with regards to cost containment that have been put in place by government. However, we must state that BMA is not adequately funded, and this compromises the establishment and the stability of a newly established entity that has been tasked with such a critical mandate, which is to ensure the security of South Africa. We ask today that the committee notes the concerns that we have raised, the risk that we have raised on the inadequate funding of the entity, and we request that the committee assist us in advocating for the appropriate funding of the BMA so that it can be able to effectively and efficiently execute its mandate. I thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO, Commissioner Mashapata. Any other matter I want to raise before we invite another presentation?
No, thank you very much, Chair and the committee members. I suppose the main point that is being communicated, Honorable Chair, is to indicate that as we requested the 2.9 billion to start the entity, we got the 250. That is in the current financial year. In the next financial year, we then had to get the 300. And then in the other financial year, we had to get the 350. So what does it mean in terms of the reversal? So the 300 million that was supposed to then be allocated for 2024-2025, they actually sent through a letter, as the CFO of Home Affairs indicated, to take out 169 million, meaning that we were going to be left with 130 million to run the organization in the next financial year. Forget the money that came with people, which is purely CEO. But of course, there was that pleading that has been done, and the minister ultimately even spoke to the president. So what actually happened was just the reversal of the 169 million, which was supposed to be the cut. And then we are back to 300. But again, if we are to look at the 300 and look at the initial request, it is very much clear. So the only thing that we are saying here, Honorable Chair, is to say that we agree and understand the challenges that are there. But BMA, we had always been asking that it must be looked at differently, simply because it doesn't even have an existing baseline. We are trying to start a baseline, and therefore we wanted some bit of, some cash in. Even if it is only 1 billion, as it were, it was then going to be able to make sure that we start functioning. The last thing that I want to say, Honorable Chair, is you will remember the back office of the BMA, we were doing this work assisted by Home Affairs in the current financial year because of what we call Section 197 transition in terms of the public service, the Labor Relations Act. But now, by the 31st of March, that particular arrangement ends. 1st of April 2024, going to the future, BMA, the umbilical cord, will be completely cut. But we are sitting with only 31 staff members to support the entire organization, including the 400 that we are going to enroll. We need to support them. the tools of trade are indeed a challenge. However, we want to just bring this to the attention of the committee. We do know that the processes had unfolded, but we also want to declare to the committee that we indeed got 150 million from CARA, which is the Criminal Asset Recovery Account. And that money, as you will know, can't be used for human resource issues. It is exclusively for procuring some of the tools of trade. And that is what we are currently busy trying to procure. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mashapata. We're now going to invite the Governor Printing Works CEO, Fosi.
Good morning, Chairperson. Morning, Honorable Minister, DM members, DG, Commissioner, CEO, and colleagues. Chair, if you allow me to share my presentation. I'm not sure if it's visible on your side.
No, it's not. Who's going to share it? Is Mr. Matonzi?
Is it visible, Chair?
Yeah, you can proceed. Thank you very much, CEO.
Thank you so much. Let me thank the committee for this opportunity to present. Chair, kindly allow me to co-present with the CFO, Mr. Ian van der Merwe, as well as the Chief Audit Executive, Ms. Constance Shibambo, but I will indicate when they need to come in. This presentation actually sets out with the strategic outlook. It specifies projects and targets for the 2024-25 financial year, but I will not go into detail as this slide serves to specifically indicate areas where the budget will be spent, just to create the strategic linkage between our plans and the budget. Then it will move to the actual allocation of the budget for the 2024-25 financial year, section which will be presented by the CFO. And I will not go through each slide, but I will focus on the critical slides and then hand over to the CFO to present the budget allocation. Just put it on the slide mode. All right. Thank you, Chair. We are here to actually present the budget allocation for Government Printing Works. And as I've indicated, these are the slides on the strategic outlook. So I thought I will consider them as read, but I will go to the slide. About GPW, basically this represents the core product families that GPW is mandated to deliver on. And these are basically the core product families that includes the production of identity documents, as well as travel documents. We particularly serve as a back office for the Department of Home Affairs, as these face value documents are then manufactured and then produced and handed over to the Department of Home Affairs so that they can then be distributed to our customers. We also produce high security certificates. There's a variety of them that GPW produces for state organs, examination papers, as well as the government gazette. In view of this, we have a number of targets that we have then set for ourselves. And this slide shows a summary of those targets. There's a total of 15 targets that we have planned for this financial year. 2 is in the office of the CEO, manufacturing and engineering has 4, operations and management has 2. These are our actual core branches, and corporate services has a total of 15 slides. Having said that, the next slides just go through the detail that shows where the budget will be allocated. As I've indicated, I will not go into much detail with that, but what I will do currently is to hand over to the CFO, present the budget for 2024-25 to indicate where this budget will be spent for the next financial year. Chair, if you allow me, let me hand over to the CFO, Mr. Ian van der Merwe. Thank you, through you.
Thank you, CFO.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. Hope I'm audible. Chair, thanks. Welcome to the Chair and the members and Minister and DM. So the budget, as it stands now, you will see that we, just to reiterate, that we are a self-funding organization. We do have to generate our own revenue. And as such, you will see that we project to be a going concern going over the MTF period. We have looked at our surpluses. It's going to come to about 2% over the MTF, up to 3% for the last year. But we do want to maintain our margins, especially when it comes to our gross profit margins. And you will see we are projecting slight increases on that over the period. I will also highlight just a few risks in terms of our cash flow going forward, that I think the committee needs to take note of. And we are having some contingency plans in place to mitigate that. We can move to the next slide. So just looking at our expenditure, we predict increases at an annual rate of about 15% over the period. We're looking at about 6.4 billion rands worth of revenue over the period from our operations. The one issue here that we need to look at is our current discount or rebate arrangement that we do have with the DHA. It's not going to be sustainable over this period, and therefore we are looking at some tariff increases from April. I've made the point before that some of these increments we haven't done for the last 2 financial years, and they are significantly impacting on our margins, and we have reviewed them. The other risk that we're sitting with is that the Treasury continues to reject some of our requests to retain our surplus, and in fact they are requesting us to surrender some of our funds over this period, and I will touch on it in a little while, just to indicate also the mitigating matters that go with that. On our revenue, you will see, in fact, most of our revenue comes from those revenue drivers. We're looking at the volumes that's being expected from passport and IDs, and we've discounted that in terms of our revenue over the period. We also have significant revenue coming from advertising, exams, contract printing, cards, and some general printing. And we have made adjustments to these tariffs over the period in terms of our costing regime and our fiscal and financial policies. So we can move to the next slide. So just to reiterate, our top revenue drivers as it stands now, obviously, is our passports, our A4 papers, our IDs, exam papers, going all the way down to firearm car production. So this is in the main our top revenue drivers over the MTF period, and we do foresee that this will remain. In terms of new business, we have to increase our efforts, especially when it comes to education, for instance. But there is a revenue drive in place to deal exactly with that. On the passports, we are reverting back to the prices before the discount structure. We're looking at a selling price on passports of about 450 rand. We have absorbed significant costs on behalf of DHA on this matter, and the same goes with the IDs. In terms of our A4 papers, the escalation is 5.5%. We have standardized our margins at around 23%. The biggest issue here, Chair, was the supply input costs that has increased significantly over the period. We have met with our suppliers to alleviate this, or at least arrest this position. And post-COVID, some of the increases amounted about 35%, and we had to pass on some of this escalations to customers. But we do feel we have arrested this going forward. The advertising, the automation of the EKZ system is a big driver for us. It will definitely contribute quite a bit to our revenue numbers. We're looking forward for the full implementation of that before the end of the financial year. We've had a general increase on examination and cards of about 5% on the existing prices. Thank you. Chair, I think it's important to just touch on our CapEx expenditure as well. In the past, we have been told that one of the reasons why Treasury reduces or asks for the retention to be surrendered is because of our capital commitments. We've gone through a significant process of identifying and sort of articulating it into our capital program and our CapEx program over the MTF show exactly what our expenditure will be. And we feel that this is a very reasonable picture. You will see that most of the expenditure will go into manufacturing and engineering, ops management, and obviously our IT is quite an important investment that we are looking at. The IT is incremental over the period. One of the biggest investments will be on our backup systems together with our new ERP system. We can move. Yeah, just to reiterate what I said, so the enterprise resource planning system is quite important. We're looking at least 100 million over the MTF. If we fully implement all modules, then this expenditure would probably move to about 250 million. And the negotiations with CETA in this regard is ongoing. The automation of the EKZ, as I said, is also an important one. We've had significant investments in this, and that's to contribute further to our revenue projections and our revenue, our ability to recover revenue. The ICT environment needs a total technological refresh and systems upgrade, and we have actually prioritized this within our current procurement plan. And to that effect, we have, in fact, dealt with quite a number of specifications, and that will go to market within the next few weeks. We have actually gone to market on a number of them in the last 6 to 8 weeks. The issue of the new headquarters is ongoing as well. We do have an implementing agent in DBSA. We're looking at costs of about 200 million in total. There has been some procurement matters that we're dealing with at DBSA on this. But as far as we are concerned, that this project will go ahead, and it should materialize in the next 18 months, and definitely over the MTF period. The issue also of procuring machinery for the state security documents is ongoing. We are in fact in the process of acquiring new machines for this, and we have done an SLA with a potential supplier, and we have made some upfront payments on this. And obviously, when commissioning happens, then we should do the final payments. There are other recapitalization efforts on the go at the moment, and we will be able to give you more detail on that as soon as we finalize some of the SLAs on this matter. We can go to the next one. Cost of employment, Chair, just to give a graphical review of where our cost of employment will be going over this period. The salient point or issue here is that we have relooked our implementation of the organizational structure. If you do recall, initially we were looking at a 3 to 4 year period. We have actually stretched that now to over 6 years. And the priority will be given to the core branches, being manufacturing, engineering, and operations management over this period. Notwithstanding the fact that some administrative functions and technical capacity might be needed in other areas, but the core definitely will be prioritized when it comes to our cost of employment. Thank you. In terms of the structure, this is the growth we do foresee over the MTF period and the subsequent payment or the subsequent cost of employment. As I said, we will review this given our current challenges, and also review it in terms of our ability to generate revenue from operations. So although this is the planned execution of that recruitment plan, we are definitely going to review this on an ongoing basis, and some of these numbers might change slightly over the period as we go into the next reporting cycle of the MTF. Services, Chair, notwithstanding the cost of sales projections that we've made, we are also having operational expenditures when it comes to goods and services per branch. This is the breakdown of that. Cost of sales mainly lie within our manufacturing, engineering, and operations management, and we have discounted this. This is purely the administration part of our goods and services. It does seem that a lot of funds go towards corporate services, but there are a number of programs within corporate services, like our security, our facility management, our IT environment. So proportionately, it still makes sense, given the fact that, as I said, most of our other expenditure does lie in cost of sales when it comes to the core branch. Thank you. Some of our assumptions, Chair, as I said, on the cost of employment is the phasing in over a 6-year period, looking at critical posts to enhance capacity on our operations and our core business. The goods and services budget is linked to our targets, as CEO has mentioned, and we do incorporate a number of plans within this, and we also take care of our recurring costs within this. Our depreciation is calculated on the existing assets as well as our future needs. We have gone through a significant exercise of reassessing our useful lives on all our assets. It has impacted on our depreciation to some extent, but looking at the matters that was raised from an audit perspective, we are getting to a point where our depreciation is more reasonable. And we have applied a number of rules, both in terms of our financial statements and our asset register as it stands. Chair, the cash flow for the period, I think, is where we'd like to just indicate some potential risks. We are definitely still liquid as it stands. Our cash flow position might just be influenced over the MTF period if we do have the continuous surrender of funding. The Treasury takes it from our expenditure and not from our retained earnings as it stands, and we do have to calculate and account for that when it comes to our balance sheet. Next slide. Chair, so I've mentioned the matter of the surrenders. We are surrendering another 695 million to the National Treasury. Unfortunately, the knock-on effects from our COVID and lockdown has been that some OEMs are not able to manufacture the machines that we need, and we are making mitigating plans for this. Unfortunately, the impact of that is that potentially revenue that could have been generated from new machinery might not materialize as we expect. I do want to show the slide or the table on what we've surrendered. Admittedly, we have the initial intention was to pass some of these onto DHA as a rebate. Unfortunately, Treasury has indicated that they need significant funds to come back to the fiscus, and we have surrendered this. And this is despite our indication of what these funds will be used for in terms of recapitalization on ICT, manufacturing, engineering. And we have made those cases on a year-on-year basis. Unfortunately, if this continues, we might be under pressure going forward, and might even, as a knock-on effect, impact on our cash flow arrangements. Next slide, please. Just go over, yeah. So I think I've made the point that we are committing quite a bit on capital projects. We have implemented our procurement plan to mitigate exactly that. The major cost drivers is going to be our cost of employment, as I said, the capex, and the material for production over the MTF period. This also includes a budget for a new commercial printing site, and we're also looking at a number of potential warehouses, especially in KZN, Mpumalanga, and Free State. On this one, the assessments will be targeted towards those regions where we feel we can get maximum revenue. And at the moment, indications are that KZN is probably the most viable as it stands at the moment. And then, Chair, we've also discounted budgets within that. Yeah, but yeah, next one. The engagements with SADC and other African countries is ongoing. We have significant market potential there to generate additional revenue streams from these countries. I think the next step essentially is to butter it down with SLAs and get some firm orders when it comes to that. But in terms of capacity, we should be able to deal with that, and then the subsequent revenue that flows from that. The EGZ system, as I said, is still a crucial revenue driver for us. We have discounted some of that within our revenue, Unfortunately, we haven't seen all the benefits from that. But this is due to change within the next financial years. And then obviously we have to look at our tariff increases. Unfortunately, if we do not do that, we will be under significant pressure. And as I said, even if we go back to our sort of 2021 tariffs, we would still have absorbed quite a bit of cost in this manner. As it stands now, we are still seen as a going concern, and the AG has also confirmed this for the foreseeable future, although there are inherent risks to this. Chair, I think I can leave it at that and hand over to the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, if I would allow the CAE to take us through the next 2 slides, then I will come back to conclude. Through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, CEO. From my end, I'll just give an indication of the audit findings as we've been observing them throughout the financial year. Currently, as of the end of Q3, we had 50% of the findings being resolved by management and another 50%. We noted there are processes that already started that are in progress, and there are still processes that were not started by the end of Q3. However, in total, we had a total of 360 findings overall within GPW that we've been looking into. And that is a clear breakdown of where the findings are sitting in all the different divisions or structures, sitting at that 50%. However, these findings on the next slide, you can please move to the next one. Okay, as I've said, the status on the previous slide speaks to the work that we've performed and all the testing that we've done as at end of Q3. So the remaining 50% that is still outstanding, we are going to cover all of that, inclusive of what the AG has raised in the 2021-2022 report. So we're going to cover that exclusively during the month of March. March is completely reserved to do our final follow-up and testing to see which findings have been addressed. So all of that will be successfully confirmed by the end of the financial year. We also noted, and it's on record, that AG has raised 75 findings for the 2022-2023 audit report. That was only concluded in December, 2 months ago, in December of 2023. We haven't started doing any follow-up on that particular one. However, we've already made an analysis of the findings that are recurring from the previous financial year of 2021-2022, which we will also cover during the month of March, because we will be doing our final wrap-up of doing a follow-up to see how far management is in addressing those findings. So once we have done that, there will be a very clear picture and indication of what has been completed by management and what the problems areas are. But overall, there are audits that are in progress in this particular quarter that we've started since January. And most of the findings we've seen that there's been new developments, but we will confirm that at the end of the financial year to see how far we are in terms of addressing the findings, Chairperson. Thank you, CEO.
Can proceed, CEO.
Chairperson, thank you so much. In the last section, a summary is as follows. We have a total of 10 strategic risks, because risk it is indeed integral to planning. We have rated 7 of them extreme, and I need to indicate why we have decided to do so as EXCO. The risks that are rated as extreme are failure to recover from business operations. And basically this is in the automation space, because we have implemented we are in the process of implementing the current procurement plan, but we have implemented a process of developing the specifications, and the majority of those have already gone through, like the CFO indicated earlier, through the specifications committee, as well as gone through advertisement, and we are on the verge of awarding the tenders in some of them, although others have already been awarded. So we decided to keep it as this because we wanted to make sure that all the backup solutions, the infrastructure refresh, as well as the infrastructure, the infrastructure research for the remote sites should actually be fully automated before we implement it, before we can actually turn this to a different color. And this puts pressure on management to make sure that work actually continues. Sorry, my apologies, Chair. I'm not sure. Technology is just jumping around. We were making sure that all the sites are fully automated before we could actually change this to a different status, but progress is underway just to make sure that we achieve that. Leakages of unauthorized issuance of security documents, we also left it as high, not because we have continuous leakages, because we are dealing with cases internally of reporting or reported cases, and reports are being implemented. The outcomes of those and the recommendations are in the progress of being developed. As soon as the reports have been fully implemented, then we will be able to turn this to a different color. So the mitigating plans are actually being implemented. Loss of production time, I think this has a knock-on effect from the COVID period, because as a manufacturing entity, we work with OEMs, like the CFO also mentioned, which have lead times in terms of production of materials as well as manufacturing of the equipment that we require. So we have put SOPs in place to manage the quality and quantity as well as our environmentals within the organization. And we are implementing the time and attendance system that is due to be concluded by the end of this financial year, just to make sure that we track production time and we marry that with the production outcomes that we have within the organization. The failure to secure paper, again, during the lockdown periods, we saw a number of OEMs closing down, and that had an impact on the production of the consumables, particularly paper. But we have established strategic partnerships with our OEMs and entered into SLAs in order to manage the relationship that we have with them. So this is basically within reach because most of the paper has been delivered on site and we are able to produce. We also have commissioned a study to have a polycarbonate plant within the government printing works. Research has actually continued and concluded. We have concluded on this, and this process is at the BSc level. Actually, we've gone out on a process to have probity assessment on this so that we can then advertise this tender. And in the next financial year, we should see some movement. And we are dovetailing the conclusion of this polycarbonate plant with the actual construction of the master plan. So the lead times are aligned just to make sure that when that plant actually comes to light, we then are able to accommodate it in that building. Cybersecurity attacks is within acceptable levels. We have strengthened our firewalls. There's continuous backup and testing and restores. And we have a clear plan on how we do it because it's happening on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Patch management is happening monthly. And we have been engaging SETA quite a lot to make sure that we participate in their contracts. And we've signed a business agreement with them, and they are on board assisting us very much with most of our processes inside, and most of the posts within ICT have been filled. We have managed to engage vendors because we would have a need based on the particular product within GPW. And then we go out to actually seek an equipment or a machine that can actually help us with that. So to avoid us having to procure differently, we need to engage them to say this is basically the equipment that we require, and they can then be able to build that that type of equipment so that we can serve our customers better, particularly since everyone is moving into the digital space, so that we are relevant and aligned to the market and the strategic direction that the sector is going into. System outages, yes, we have been experiencing system outages before, but the national key point where the passport and ID factory are actually located together with the ICT unit does not experience load shedding. But we do have backup generators just to make sure that we ensure business continuity. We have been engaging SETA in line with the MRP recommendations to make sure that the 10-year ICT strategy is implemented, so the draft already exists. And as soon as the engagements are finalized, then we will be able to mitigate that risk. We've also requested white space from SETA just to make sure that they serve as a remote backup in addition to the CSIR, so that we can have on-site as well as remote backup facilities. The ICT steering committee is established and is meeting. We've already migrated some of our operations to the cloud platform, particularly our email centers. Loss of revenue, we continue to monitor our back orders, make sure that the AX system is updated in terms of the transactions that we put through. We resolve the complaints that are registered there. And as we push towards the promulgation of the security printers bill, we need to make sure that we amass as much revenue as we can. We also following on our debtors to make sure that what is owed to GPW is actually paid back. There's a clear plan. We're working with the AGSA on this one to make sure that we recover that which is owed to GPW. The security printers bill was supposed to have served in the current financial year. However, with the reprioritization of the bills, we have then agreed that it will then move into the next financial year, because the consultation process, we were only left with 2 provinces, and through the minister, we've written to the premiers so that they can intervene and allow the 2 departments to sit with us so that we can present just to those remaining 2, and then thereafter it should then follow the draft legislative process so that it can be concluded. We are really highly pressured to conclude on this bill so that we can continue with the ring fencing of state security printing material by GPW. We are implementing our plan to go into Africa and other African countries as well as SADC to make sure that we increase our revenue basis. We are attracting the right skills, as it may be known that we're operating with the critical skills that are mainly located in the private sector, the artisans in different categories. However, in view of the austerity measures, we have realized that, as the CFO mentioned, we had to spread out our recruitment plan just to make sure that we only buy a few chunks where our budget can actually allow us, and rather focus more on generating revenue and be able to do more with less. So we are focusing on reskilling, upskilling, retraining of our staff, and training in collaboration with Printing SA and other entities, just to make sure that we can build our own timber and be able to be more effective with what we have. We are managing the issues that we have experienced with the reputational damage, particularly from the previous system failure, as well as the data loss. So the re-automation of the e-gazette system went live in September last year. We are now testing the last module, particularly to make sure that going forward, we don't have a challenge into the post-go live process. We have the Back to Basics committee, which sits every day to look at customer complaints, customer perceptions, and we are addressing those on a regular basis. We have a new project manager, Mr. Machimana, who's on board as well, who is managing this as a project to make sure that there's customer feedback, and we always go back to the market to engage customers so that we can know their needs. ISO standards is a project that we are busy with as well. We're implementing the audit action plans as well as the risk management plan. And we have a change management strategy that was approved, and we are going to have a clear plan starting 1st of April to implement that through our new DDG Corporate Services, Laura Moki, who's also on board. We need to demonstrate our commitment to implementing our targets, which are set both at the APP and operational plan level, so that we can improve overall organizational efficiency. We are presenting the budget to the portfolio committee for consideration. Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. And thanks very much, Commissioner Mashapata and your team. Members, these are the 2 reports before the portfolio committee, and I'm now inviting members to interact with the reports. Mr. Matonzi will assist me if there are any hands being raised.
Yes, there are 2 hands, Mr. Pillay and Mr. Ross.
Honorable Pillay, can you proceed?
Thank you very much, Chair. No, I just want to welcome both the reports and we note it. And I want to reiterate that the BMA funding is critical in order for them to be able to operate optimally. And if there's any way that we can be able to motivate as per their request and recommendation, then I would fully support that we do. We have to be able to empower and enrich the BMA in order for them to function. And then in respect of GPW, just to ask, what is the projected increase of tariffs that they see may come into play in April? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay. Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters for their comprehensive presentations. Chair, I think Commissioner Masiapato would enjoy your Freudian slip. I'm sure he wishes he was in Commissioner Moepia's position, and certainly not in his own, which is a really, really almost impossible situation. Chairperson, we see that there's a 1.4 billion budget, of which 86% is wages. And it was mentioned that there's an 8% increase to hire senior members, etc. But my question here is, were these employees that are at BMA, were they not also part of the public sector wage agreement? Because this would already add 7.5% to the wage bill now, and then in the next year, a CPI increase. So surely the 8% increase is just going to be absorbed by the public sector wage agreement. If I can just get clarity on that. Then, Chair, just to repeat my question from the beginning, which I just posed because it was in the DHA's slide deck. So the reversal of budget cuts for the BMA is welcomed, albeit very small. And border security has been severely underfunded. So when we put the bill through the National Assembly in March 2020, at that time it was indicated that the BMA will add another 6.5 billion rand per annum to our border management costs and take 15 years to implement. So now we have a budget of 1.4 billion, which is obviously less than 6.5 billion. So my question is, compared to the original budget plan of the BMA and that implementation timeframe, how far behind are we? And what impact does this have? Are you now going to be reducing or taking out elements of that plan? Or is the time frame going to be increased to 60 years, for example? That we can just get clarity on that. Then in terms of the GPW, firstly, Chair, on the 3rd of May 2022, this committee asked why the GPW had removed the balance sheet from the presentations and resolved that they should include it in future reports. And I see again, I don't see it anywhere, Chair. It hasn't been included once again. And this is important because it shows whether Home Affairs uses GPW as a bank or not. So we don't see trade and other receivables, which we shouldn't really have in this scenario necessarily, and then also deferred income. So that's where government receives services or government is paying for services that have not been rendered. So I'd just like to understand what those two amounts are, the trade and other receivables and the deferred income. Well, that would be of the previous year. Yeah. So now if we look at slide 37, Chair, we see in the midterm now surpluses of 2 to 3%. And this was at 10% pre-COVID. So we've always been given the excuse that it was about COVID, that's why the surplus was less, but it's long gone now. And it seems like the surpluses are staying at 2 to 3%. So in 2019, when we began our term, the revenue was 1.5. It's now 2. So that's shown a reasonable increase. But the cost of sales has gone up almost double, and the OPEX has gone up almost triple, whereas the net profit has gone down from 528 million to 39 billion. And from what I can see, the employee benefits are up by 50% over these 5 years. So I'd like to understand what explains this increase, that the employee benefits have gone up 50% over a 5-year period. And then if we look at the midterm projection going forward, we see a revenue increase of 17%. The headcount increases by 21%, but the COE, Well, the wages increased by 32%, which is double the projected revenue increase. So I just want to understand how this is going to work, and especially if we do not hit those revenue increases, whereas we commit to such a large COE increase. So I'd like to understand the reasoning behind this. And then, Chair, the professional services. So professional services in the 1920 budget was between then and the 2025 financial year. It shows an increase of 19% per annum. So that is a substantial increase. I'd like to understand, what are these professional services, and why are they increasing at such a rapid rate? Are these services that are replicating things that are being done that should be done inside the department, or is it additional services for a specific reason? Because it's quite a high increase and it's eating into the profitability. Then if we look forward, I'd like to understand why the employee benefits are jumping up 24% between the 25 and the 26 financial year. Is that because of a large uptake? I'm not so sure that the number here matches the numbers you show in terms of how many employees you're going to hire. Because if you have a 21% headcount over the 3-year period, and your employee benefits are already jumping 24% in the first year, I don't understand that increase. Then there's also a sharp drop in professional services between the 25 and 26 financial year. Is this now because these services are being insourced somehow with the increase in employee benefits? If you can just explain that as well. Then slide 38. So the current discount agreement between GBW and DHA is not sustainable. Therefore, the tariff increases will go back to what they were from the 1st of April. But last year, the GPW told this committee that you've pushed a 50 Rand and 3 cents saving on the passports. But at that same time, the Department of Home Affairs had doubled the cost of the passports. So how is it that you allowed that 50% discount when the passports had been doubled, when the revenue received by DHA was doubled, and then only a year afterwards reduce it again, or reduce the discount? I'm trying to understand, how did you perceive that 50 Rand discount was going to be okay in the medium term, and what changed to now make it not okay? And then finally, Chairperson, on the security printers bill, my question is, has a socio-economic impact assessment on the security printers bill been done as yet? And yeah, that's my question. That's my final question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ross. I see the hand of Honorable Lekwasa.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon or morning to all the colleagues on the platform. Chair, mine is just to note the reports and maybe to agree with Honorable Pillay on the issues that he has raised. But I have one more question of clarity, which I did not get the clarity well from GPW. Because I see under cost of sales, there are categories that are duplicated there in support of expenditure with different amounts. Maybe I just need clarity. I might have missed that. I need to be clarified on that point to say, why are the duplicates supporting expenditure specified there with different amounts? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Members, Mr. Matonzi, there's any other hands?
No, Chair, there's no other hand.
Okay, there's one other matter, Minister and the Deputy Minister. It's around the funding of a border management authority. And I think all of us, we have appreciated the establishment of this institution. And it appears that there's continuous call from that end of the border management authority in relation to the fund that must assist its operation, given the responsibilities and the role of this institution. And I think these are concerns members are raising, Deputy Minister and the Minister. And it might appear that there's no political will to make sure that there's adequate funding for purpose of operations of the Border Management Authority and its governance. And that will have a negative impact moving forward, given that there's a lot of work that must be put on the ground to make sure that this institution is stabilized, but also services to the South African throughout the borderline. I wanted your take, Minister, because this is a matter that has been raised with the Portfolio Committee. We do appreciate the reversal of the funds that initially it was cut, but I think there's a political will that must be demonstrated to make sure that this institution is well funded to cover its operation. I wanted a sense from the ministry around this point. If there's no any other matters have been raised by Honorable Pillay, Honorable Ross, and Honorable Khwase, we'll invite the Commissioner to comment, and then we'll invite the CEO to comment, and we'll then invite both the DM and the Minister to comment on these presentations. Commissioner?
No, thanks, Chair and committee members. Yeah, indeed, in terms of the issue raised by Honorable Pillay, it's exactly as you had raised, Honorable Chair, and I suppose the Minister should be able to reflect on that. We had been really requesting the committee and of course the ministry to also be able to drive this particular session, and I think the minister should be able to reflect more on that particular aspect. Now, let me go straight to the questions by Honorable Ruos because they are mainly very clear and very targeted. Let me put it this way. You will remember, honorable members, that in the 2022-2023 financial year, we sat inside the Department of Home Affairs as being incubated. Therefore, there was an allocation of 67 million, which was kind of new money allocated to this branch, BMA, for the purposes of capacitation. The second part of the work we had to do was the integration, where we had to do all this administrative work to make sure that the people come into the BMA from the 4 government departments. So those people came with their money and they came with a bit of the operational expenditure. Therefore, when we had to go to the 1st of April last year, when we requested in 2022, in other words, preparing for the 1st of April 2023, when we were preparing, when we said we wanted 2.9 billion, it was for the purposes of establishing the organization, for getting the people that are coming in, because those ones, they come in as they stand, and the operations are running as they stand, both in terms of COE, but also in terms of their goods and services. So we wanted the new money. Now, in terms of new money, we didn't get the 2.9, but instead we got 250. What does that mean? What it means is, during the process of capacitating the BMA, we then had to bring on board 200 border guards. These are new employees. We therefore had to create a baseline for them, those sitting inside the Department of Home Affairs. So we did all of that. But for us to be able to create the back office, we now have to look at the new money, which is the 250 that we got. So the key issues that we had to do, which is now entering into the 2023-2024 financial year, which is what Honorable Ross is asking about the appointment of the senior officials. Now, the senior person that came into the BMA from all of the other departments, despite the 3 commissioners that came through the incubation, in other words, the layer in between, we only got 2 directors. One was from Home Affairs and one was from the Department of Land Reform, the Agriculture Department. The rest were ordinary people out there in the ports doing the work. And that is basically what. So what we had to do was to start moving in filling up what we call statutory positions, meaning that the positions that we will have to have for us to be able to do this work and still comply with the Public Financial Management Act. That is why we had then to bring in the CFO, for example. We have to bring in the CIO. These are the senior people that are coming in who are supposed to be kept, to be adopted by the organization through the 250 as part of building the COE. And that is why we even brought the head of HR, the person who sits below a Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services. And we had to bring in the other assistant commissioners responsible for operations, One obviously is the one responsible for specialized functions, and one is responsible for the Regional Targeting Center. So those are the key that we have to bring into the organization so that there is a layer of management that has to make sure that the organization runs. As we speak now, we have been supported in terms of the Chief Risk Officer by the one from Home Affairs, the Chief Audit Executive by the one from Home Affairs. And as we speak, we have done the interviews for all of those, and they're going to come on board. So that at least when we enter the 1st of April 2024, because by that time, the transition would have ended, we should be able to have these positions in-house to be able to do the work. And that is where you will see then that aspect that the CFO was talking about in terms of the 8% a shift in as far as that part is concerned. But at the same time, one of the things that complicates the whole issue, as you will remember, is obviously the increase that the public service agreed on in the Public Service Coordinated Bargaining Council. It's a 7%, as it is said, but it is broken into various parts. So that particular reality kicked in, and at the end, that increase has to be absorbed with the available money, as it were, in the department. It's not only a BMA issue, but it's everywhere. And that has been the reality, which is why in the upcoming financial year, 2024-2025, whatever the increase is going to come out there in terms of labor discussions with the government, ultimately there has to be a way that we need to be able to get that to be able to absorb in the environment. So that is basically the reality, as it were. Let me conclude, Chair, with this part about our original plan. You see, the original plan, Honorable Ru, was in terms of the BMA. By the way, in terms of the roadmap as well as the business case, it was to start running from 2017. At that time, hence the document was crafted, it was to run until 2032. In that particular period, we were looking at ultimately, even in terms of staff complement, looking at around 9,756 border guards, for example, together with those for operational support. So actually it is 11,220 land border guards, as it were. And then that was the ultimate number, and the period was 2032. That is why one of the presentations we had made initially in the committee, we spoke about 3.2 billion just for COE. That is all what was part of the plan. Now, your question now is, what does it mean going forward? So what it now means is the entire business case, as well as the projected growth of the BMA, it is no longer there. And that is why now we have to then recraft the current status in terms of how the BMA is supposed to roll through. We now have 400 border guards on training. So they're coming on board in the new financial year. Once they come in, then we'll be having around 600 border guards. But as we will know, on the side, we do have over almost 2,000 of the specialized functions. And in there, we also have the support staff. So all in all, we'll be looking at around 2,006 staff complement combined. And in terms of the COE, we are still talking around 1.4. So compared to the projected figures, we are very much off course. It's not even to be adjusted, but it's just to be recrafted, unless if there will be some different reflection. The last thing that I want to say, which is something that it is very much real on the ground, is that part of this particular integration for the BMA was also to be looking at the 6,000 police who had been exclusively working on border issues, who are sitting at some few billions in terms of the COE, and who had been doing this access control work across the ports. And as we will know, that particular part of the fund for that particular function, it is not through into the BMA, and the integration did not happen. So that is what exacerbates the shortfall. And that is why this whole thing will take time for it to gain shape according to the legislation as provided for. So let me stop there, Chair, on those particular aspects. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mashapa. Exactly that point, the last point that you're raising, I think if the Minister can also take us through, because my reading is that it may require both ministries to interact with the funding that should be been transferred from the police to the BMA. And if there were any other initiative, particularly at that level, to interact with the ministry, or what were maybe the challenges that the ministry is confronting with, so that at least the committee is being well briefed in confidence in terms of these challenges. And this matter also being raised in the previous interaction with ourselves and the BMA. Minister, if you can take that matter and you articulate on that at a time when we're inviting you back. Government Printing Works. I'm sure the CFO, BMA, is there any other matter before I invite the CEO and her team? Okay. Government Printing Works.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me appreciate the questions that we've received from honorable members. I will take the questions from Honorable Ruas, and then I will hand over to the CFO to take the questions from Honorable Ruas and Honorable Pile, as well as Honorable Lopasi. On the SAYAS issue, I've mentioned previously to the committee that the security printers bill, when the process started a couple of years ago, we actually were utilizing the DHA legal team to assist us in the absence of the in-house team. And at that point, through this process, we had facilitated the process of having SAYAS being conducted. And this was done in collaboration with DPME because a certificate had to be issued before we actually proceed with the consultative process. So I need to indicate that that was done through the DHA legal team at that point. However, as part of the draft legislative process, before the bill is presented to Cabinet, we will then run another SAYAS with them as required. But we are still in communication with DPME to make sure that now that GPW has an internal legal team, they will work collaboratively with the departments to make sure that all due processes are followed. Chair, thank you. Let me hand over to the CFO to take all the finance-related questions at this point. Thank you. Through you.
CFO.
Thank you, Chair. So absolutely, the issue is that the cash flow gives us the most risk within GPW at the moment, and that's probably the reason why we concentrated on the cash flow and the risk associated with that. The balance sheet, gets expressed in the cash flow to some extent, but the balance sheet is available for presentation. But to the point that on our trade and other receivables, we do sit with receivables of about 430 million rand, of which a large portion, around 40%, sits within 180 days. So if we do apply our impairment policy and our debtors policy, we in fact need to provide for the write-off of that 40%, which accounts for the 180-day plus. The matter there is that we can't just write it off without going through a due diligence process, and that's what we're embarking at the moment. So although the trade and receivables might be at that level, the actual potential of recovering is much less, and is in the region of about 220 million as it stands. And we are embarking on a process of dealing with our debtors and getting them to respond and pay. The deferred income and retained earnings and cash equivalents is at 2.4 billion, and we've asked Treasury to retain this, and we've made the case to say exactly what will be the commitments on that, being CapEx, being the ICT environment, and being a number of other issues operationally as well. And we're looking at the response from National Treasury and to see how what the response is, and if we have to adjust our plans accordingly, we will have to do that. And I think I've made the case that we have surrendered quite a bit of money to them as it goes on. The surplus is, it was reduced because we took a view on what the ability is of the institution to actually generate significant revenue. And I can't sit here with a conscience and say that we will maintain 10% over the MTF, whereas I know it will not happen. And that's why we reduced it. The function of that was also the issue of the tariffs, as I said. We've had significant supplier input costs increases over this period, which we, to some extent, absorbed and also passed on to our customers. And that's in effect the biggest contribution to that. In terms of the wages and the new structure, certainly we have lost a lot of capacity over the last 5 years, and we're trying to recapacitate this organization in terms of that. Some of these skills don't come cheap, and they don't come easily, and not easily available within the market. And that's why we took the position to say, instead of looking at this new structure over a 3-year period, we look at it over a 6-year period, and we will prioritize our core business or core environments on that, especially in the engineering environment. And let me reiterate to say that we have gone to market to find resources to join GPW in this especially engineering environment, and it's been very difficult to secure those resources. The knock-on effect on professional services does go towards our maintenance of our machinery and our ICT investments to a large extent, and our ability to manage and service those licenses. And again, the suppliers and the maintenance agreements have increased over this last 2 to 3 years, and we're seeing that impact, especially on our professional services. We are projecting, or we are expecting that some of this might taper out over the MTF period. But again, it's something that we'll have to reassess on an annual basis as it goes. And we've also looked at implementing a number of cost-cutting measures over this period. And that impacts to a large extent on some of our operational expenditures and the projections that we make in this respect. The matter of the rebates or the discounts to DHA is something that we need to relook. And then I think just to the question of Honourable Pillay is that we're reverting to our 2021 tariffs that were there, but we're also looking at a subsequent 5.5% increase over the MTF period. The cost structure or the tariff structure that DHA implements, I think it's independent from ours, and they do take probably a view on what they would sell these passports and IDs for. All we're saying is that we need to stabilize that tariff regime and take it forward over the MTF period. The other matter raised in terms of seemingly a duplication of the cost of sales within goods and services. I think we just need to acknowledge that there are some direct costs that relate to manufacturing, like the salaries in staff, the factory, the water and lights, etc. There's also depreciation, and that gets reflected within the cost of sales basket, if you like. And if you look at what's presented, that's where it's reflected. The other administration costs mainly go towards our support staff and our recurring daily costs. So I hope that clarifies the matter in terms of the cost of sales seemingly duplicated under goods and services and vice versa. We just account for it in a different classification, but they do get aggregated when we look at our management accounts. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've covered most of the matters raised. Thank you.
Yeah, that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Honourable Pillay, I see your hand.
Chairperson, yes, I just wanted to propose that GPW comes back to us to present the balance sheet so that in our legacy report, we are detailed around the governance of GPW. I think it's key for us because we are going to be working towards our legacy report shortly. And I think it's important for us to be able to make sure we have those proper details in our report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Honourable Ross, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to support what Honourable Pillay has suggested and also request that we receive the list of the debtors. Because, Chairperson, those debtors are public service. They are government departments. And so we need to understand which government departments are not paying GPW back because it puts their finances at risk. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let me invite the Deputy Minister and then the Minister, DM.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a very straightforward observation, and it is around the issue of financing for the PMA. And I think that we can all agree that we know that the fiscus is constrained. So it's difficult to raise almost all the money that you need from the fiscus. But when we raise these issues, I think we must also consider the negative impacts that it actually has on the economy of not funding the PMA, because it means we are most likely to attract more illicit goods into the market, which will also contribute into declining tax revenues, which in turn results into the problems in terms of government functioning. And I think just as a straight answer to the question that was asked, yes, the funding problems will affect the operational performance of the PMA. And I think we really need to find, and I'm happy, Chair, that you hinted that there are other departments who might be involved in this kind of a situation, and we need to rope everybody in. But from our side, we'll continue to lobby and work harder to make sure that we raise the funding that is required by the PMA. But we'll also need the support of the members, as we've been saying previously, that look, this is the one institution we need to make sure that it is properly funded. But we'll continue with our endeavors, Chairperson. The rest, I think I'll leave to the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for comments. Minister?
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me start with the BMA. Chairperson, as you know, the BMA is part of the JCPS cluster, the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security cluster. What you are noticing today is the BMA caught up in the whirlwind of the problems within the cluster. It's not that BMA was specifically targeted for budget cuts or underfunding. You will recognize that over the years, whenever the state had problems with the budget, the cuts were made from JCPS cluster, not from social cluster, not from economic cluster and other. It was the GPS cluster that has suffered over the years. And you recognize that by what's happening in the BMA. Now, there has been recognition, fortunately, very, very recently, by both the President and the Minister of Finance, that this ought to stop and be reversed. Because we were lobbying very hard, speaking as it was said, to both the Minister of Finance and the President. The Minister of Finance, even if you have to call him now, he will pledge his total support of the BMA. He says so all the time. What is left now for that total support with financial support? These cards from security clusters must stop. The Treasury has already written letters of making these cards that they've been mentioned. And only 3 weeks ago, when the president, maybe 3 weeks in the government Lehotla, these cards, we've not yet seen its effects. In other words, I'm saying in the coming budgets and financial years, it's not only going to be not making cards from the GCPS cluster, but it's also trying to boost them in order to reverse the effects of the cards that have been going on. As you can see, it has already started with the police in terms of the number of police officers that are hired every year, 10,000 per annum. It was part of reversing those cuts, and we have demanded a similar treatment. So all I'm saying is that the realization of the damage that is being caused to the JCPS cluster, including the BMA, has just occurred a few weeks ago, and we are still due to see the effects in the coming period when the Minister of Finance makes good of his support to the BMA. But you are also aware that in the meantime, in order for the BMA to have tools of trade, they receive money from CARA, and we don't think it's once off. You are aware CARA is the structure that deals with crime proceeds, the proceeds of crime. That money, part of it has been given to BMA to try and buy tools of trade. And we think we're still going to be demanding a lot of money from CARA funding in order to boost the BMA. So I am hopeful that the original program, which Honorable Rose spoke about, will be put back on track after this realization and this agreement. The second area I want to deal with, Chair, is the government printing works. Our relationship with government printing works and the understanding of treasury, it is also something that we are confronting, even with the presidency, because we are not very happy, Chairperson. We are not happy because government printing works is not Home Affairs printing works. It's government printing. It's supposed to serve the whole government. But the biggest client ever is Home Affairs. We are the ones who, in other words, if Home Affairs stops using government printing works, it will collapse within a week or a month. It will collapse. It will no longer be viable. It is viable because of Home Affairs. Now, we see a serious abnormality there in terms of the tariffs. That money which flows from Home Affairs going to government printing works becomes a profit for government printing works. And the Treasury looks at it and brings and pull it back. You saw a slide here, how much money is Treasury sucking from government printing works because they regard it as their entity. In other words, they regard it as a government business whose profits must go back to the fiscus. Now, the anomaly is, which we told the Minister of Finance, you give us the budget as Minister of Finance. We use that budget to purchase services from government printing works at certain high tariffs, and that money flows back to Treasury to start supporting all the other government businesses and not Home Affairs business. So that where does it leave Home Affairs? Receive money from Treasury, you transfer it to government printing works, it goes back to Treasury. And then Home Affairs suffers, As you already see, our compensation for employees is a very big problem. So we have told that to Treasury and we are fighting to resolve it. Secondly, with the presidency, we were not happy. The fact that some government departments do their printing everywhere when they've got the government printing works here, which is also printing for other countries. So the president has just recently given an instruction that all government printing must be done at government printing works. What is left is the logistics between the CEO of government printing and the DG in the presidency. The DG being the person who was given this instruction, that he must make sure that that happens. If that happens, Chairperson, government printing works will become a viable entity. And when Treasury takes money from it, it will be that it is recycling money from within, which at the present moment is not necessarily doing. And we also impressed upon them that it will become an embarrassment for government printing works to start saving our neighboring countries, like Namibia, as it's doing, like Eswatini, like we are about to start saving Kenya, etc. While here back at home, people using printing elsewhere, we thought it a very serious anomaly, and we believe we are fighting hard enough for all these anomalies to be reversed. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe lastly, because Honorable Rose has raised it. Honorable members, it has come to our attention that South Africa is, through Department of Home Affairs, subsidizing its passport more than any other country. We even hired a service provider to do a benchmark, and he did reach that conclusion and gave us in figures that indeed we are subsidizing a passport. And we believe passports are acquired by people who are much well off than generally those who just need IDs. And our IDs is not that much subsidized. We then, through that method, developed new tariffs of how much should members of the public pay for the passports? And in terms of the act, you have to do it in consultation with the Minister of Finance. And our tariffs were cut by half by the Minister of Finance, which I regard as another serious anomaly and contradiction. That you give us money as finance, we take that money to government printing works via some high tariffs, and then a profit is made, the money goes back to Treasury. When we try to make our own money in Home Affairs, you cut the tariffs by half. We find all those things quite understandable, and we are sitting with Treasury to finalize them. Lastly, on the BMA, you are aware that the BMA is now controlled by a group of 10 ministers who have formed an IMC. And you are aware that all the IMC's members, in every IMC that is established, all the members are selected by the president at his own discretion. This is the only IMC where the president has got no discretion, but members of that IMC are selected by Parliament directly through a bill, through an act of Parliament. In the BMA Act, it names the ministers who must sit in this IMC, the 10 of them. Now, I'm intending to raise some of these sharp questions about the BMA, seeing that all the ministers in the security cluster are sitting in that IMC, to actually raise very sharply the issues you are raising here, because the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Police actually sit there as part of this IMC. So, and the Minister of Defense will be able to show them these intricacies of border control. And if we fail to make any inroads in there, we'll come back to you and inform you that we have tried our best and we don't think we are making any inroads. We're asking members of the community of the committee to please come in. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thanks very much, Minister, for that progressive initiative. We'll await for that update, but note that we're fully behind the work of all the institution, but grounding our focus to the BMA, given the reasoning behind and the matters they've raised with the portfolio committee, but also with the members of the committee who have raised concerns on the threat that may face the BMA failure to inject more resources to its operations. We've taken note also on the matter that has been raised around the panel, and I think it's clear, Minister, that we'll appreciate the consultation with the Independent Electoral Commission so that we are able to come back to the committee to brief the committee and are able to deposit the report in the House for adoption of the names that have been outlined by a team, but also the principles laid in your report, I think, gave assurance to the issues that were raised by the committee in our last meeting when we were rejecting this panel. We note the report on the IEC in relation to the timetable and the preparedness for the 2024 provincial and national election, which I think were in the interaction with the Select Committee Chairperson of Security and Justice, that we may need to conduct an oversight given the magnitude of work that is going to lie with the IEC in preparation for the elections, and also the introduction of the independent candidates, so that we're able to observe the preparedness and the mechanism that will assist us to have a free and fair election. Once we have solidified consultation with the Select Chair of the Justice and Security to conduct an oversight to the IEC to check their readiness. We note the budget reports and also the challenges that have noted that have been raised by the Department of Home Affairs, the IEC, and also the challenges that may arise, but also the initiative that they're taking upon so that they close up on the on the budget cuts or on the shortfalls that you'll be experiencing as we proceed to the elections. Obviously, the matter that we're just a step off of the Border Management Authority, we've summarized it well. The minister, I think, were clear in terms of the issues that we raised, and we fully ground our support to that process. The government printing works will, the committee may need to meet to deal and analyze some of the issues that I think the content advisor have been briefing us on, so that when we convene again the government printing works in relation to the financial position or the governance, we're able to be clearer on certain issues that have been raised, particularly by Honorable Pillay, Honorable Ross, and Honorable Lhwase. And then we'll convene again the government printing works. It will assist us, including what Honorable PF raised, to articulate some of the issues in the legacy report that may need to be taken up by the 7th Parliament, but particularly want to exhaust the issues that are arising from the financial report and the budget and the initiative that are there. Minister, we take appreciation of the development around the decision by the presidency to make sure that all the departments reside their services within Home Affairs, within the government printing works. I think this is a good progress, and that will able to bring the government printing works to one of the institutions that has been always been rendering services within the department. But that initiative need to be implemented within a healthy governance and a healthy financial institution. Hence, this committee, we have resolving that we'll call again the department. But before that, we'll able to deal with in committee to reflect on the issues that are arising from the committee. I think the CFO and the CEO of Government Printing Works notes the issues of the committee. Want to thank all members for having contributed and interacted with all the reports, and the colleagues, Minister, for heading the IEC Government Printing Works, and the BMA Deputy Minister, and thanks, and the DG, and all the colleagues that participated in this presentation. We stand off all the items. Mr. Matonsi, is there any other item that you want to brief the committee? Mr. Salmo?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Proceed.
No, I was saying there was no other issue.
Okay, Mr. Salmo? Okay, I thought they will brief us that tomorrow we are reconvening at 9 o'clock to deal with the B bill, and we request all members, I think, will be presented by both the chief state law advisors and the parliamentary legal services. I think that is an announcement that we are reconvening tomorrow, Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And in the afternoon, the security cluster, we're fully aware that members of the committee will also be participating with the oral questions and reply. Thanks very much. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Chair. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.